Yada Yahowah. Azab, separation. 12. Tsapah, on the lookout. A disapproving rebuke. By the conclusion of the first chapter, Chabaquwq's haunting predictions regarding Sha'uwl, Paul were sufficient to demonstrate that Yahowah despises Christianity. And now, the prophet continues by telling us that God is not about to alter any of the requirements to participate in his covenant or change his approach to our reconciliation, no matter what Paul has led billions to believe. And to think, Christians include this prophecy in their Bibles, oblivious to God's overt condemnation of them. On this, my requirements and responsibilities, mishmaritheni, my verbalized expressions of the terms and conditions which have been conveyed to observe regarding my service in safeguarding your preservation, to ponder the implications of Shema, to explore, closely examining and carefully considering, I have decided of my own initiative that I will literally and continually stand, I will always choose to be present and accountable to sustain others, enabling them to stand, imperfect cohortative, and, I will choose to always remain firm and present, Azab, I will consistently appear and serve, providing assistance by prominently appearing and presenting myself, imperfect cohortative, God, acting alone, has chosen to take this stand, and he will never be influenced by anyone when it comes to consistently, genuinely, and continually being ready and 617 able to serve, on the Almighty's, that which strengthens, protects and fortifies, Matzor, the defensive stronghold which safeguards, preventing a successful attack by the adversary. Therefore, I will be on the lookout, Tsapah, I will continually keep watch and be on guard, surveying the situation, imperfect, in order to see, so as to observe, consider, and perceive, what he will say about me, posing a question concerning what he will communicate regarding me, and what message he will convey in association with me. So then, how can I be expected to change my attitude, thinking, or response, why should I reverse course and mislead, imperfect, concerning, during and upon, my disapproving rebuke, my complaint, desire to correct the record, necessary refutation, and strong disapproval, my rational arguments in response and subsequent chastisement and punishment, from Yakak, to adjudicate and correct. Chabaquwq, embrace this, Habakkuk 2:1. The Barith, covenant is a contract. There are specified conditions and requirements that each party to the relationship must accept for it to work as intended. For us, there is one prerequisite and 4 requirements. When we act upon them, Yahowah is then required to respond as promised and to deliver each of the 5 stated benefits. This said, it is a sweet deal for both parties. Yahowah gets to share his universe with his family, and we get to live forever in his presence, inheriting all he has to offer. Equally wonderful, the conditions of the covenant are for our benefit. They are not the least bit burdensome. These conditions were established with Abraham and delineated in Bersith, Genesis. We can rely upon them because God isn't about to change them. And while that is 618 good news for those who have placed their trust in him and his Torah, it is devastating for Christianity and Judaism, both of which require God's relationship with humankind to change in innumerable ways. And God is having none of it. He has established his plan, and he's committed to it. In support of the covenant, Yahowah has established a 7-step path from our world to his home through the Mikra, invitations to be called out and meet. And while all that is required of us is to respond to his invitations, Daud's responsibilities in fulfilling and enabling them are so extraordinary that they define his character and calibrate the extent of his devotion to our well-being. To gloss over them, or worse, negate them as Paul has done, and as rabbis are doing, is hurtful and disrespectful in the extreme. Clearly, there is no reason for Yahowah to change anything. His plan is generous and fair. His beloved Son has already paid the price, having made the sacrifices, to provide the promised benefits. The Mikra achieve their purpose. To alter the process would be to suggest that we are smarter than God, and it would discredit the Messiah's sacrifices. Even if people think otherwise, if they were to vote on it, God has made his position clear. He isn't going to alter his requirements nor opt out of his responsibilities for anyone or any reason. Good fathers, and Yahowah is the best, work on behalf of their children. They strive to strengthen and protect them, never wavering when it comes to their love and support. So, when someone like Sha'uwl, Paul comes around and claims otherwise, God is none too pleased. And for the sake of his family members, he is quick to rebuff the threat to the well-being of his children. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all require God to change everything, from his name to his covenant, from 619 his Torah to his promises, even his people. This impoverished exchange is from an enlightening, uplifting, and emancipating family relationship to stupefying, controlling, and homogenizing religions. With millions and billions preferring to be pigs rolling in human excrement, Chabaquwq's recording of Yahowah's pronouncement affirms that God has not developed an appetite for their stench. Pigs are pigs and he loves sheep. Since Yahowah is steadfast and dependable, consistent and reliable, his approach toward and response to the religious who mislead by misappropriating and perverting his testimony is going to be identical to all that we have read throughout the Torah and prophets. He is disgusted by the likes of rabbis. He despises them. He will condemn them. And he has no sympathy for those who became their prey in light of all he has done and said to dissuade them from forfeiting their inheritance. Yes, I know that this disapproving rebuke is directed at a most peculiar rabbi, one who claimed to be the best student of an acclaimed religious teacher, and not toward those who crafted the two Talmuds. But the difference is only in semantics. One grew out of the failures of the others. Their methods were disgustingly similar. And just because this prophet was asked to focus God's criticism on this one man, it does nothing to diminish the blistering attack Yahowah has waged against Judaism throughout all of his other prophets. Therefore, God's disapproving rebuke of this Sha'uwl will be similar to the previous Sha'uwl, with one foreshadowing the other. By using two different words for stand, Amad and Yazab, we can be assured that Yahowah has chosen to take a stand and remain firm on his and our behalf. He will be accountable, present when needed, right where he said he would be, ready to lift us up so that we can stand with him. 620 With this pronouncement that God would be on the lookout for the likes of Sha'uwl, ready in advance to rebuke him for falsely testifying that he had changed his plans, it should have stopped to say an individual dead in his tracks. Not only is Sha'uwl explicitly named and meticulously described in the prophecy, but he also reveled in the attention. Like a moth to the flame, Paul thrice cited statements from Chabaquwq to advance his agenda. It is similar to an obscure politician capitalizing on bad news to garner the notoriety needed to catapult himself out of the shadows. Sha'uwl's, Paul's house of cards has been toppled centuries before its foundation was even laid. There is no possibility that Yahowah sanctioned the dissolution of his Torah or its replacement with a New Testament. The chosen people have not been replaced, nor has the covenant. There is but one man God considers his son, Messiah, and King, the prophet, Daud. Yahowah is on record saying his response will be to provide cogent arguments that demonstrate his disapproval of Sha'uwl. We are considering them in this prophecy, while many others are systematically chronicled throughout questioning Paul. Should you have been squeamish over the unrelenting and derogatory approach I have taken toward Sha'uwl, Paul, you now know that it was God's desire that I do so. Since there has never been another book that systematically rebukes Paul by contrasting his words against Yahowah's, and, since Yahowah has promised to provide his disapproving rebuke through rational arguments, you are reading the fulfillment of God's promise, at least up to the point punishing Paul. And while I'm certain that Yahowah will delegate that responsibly as is his custom, the verdict is already known. 621 And our first clue is that Sha'uwl, Paul and Sha'uwl, hell are homonyms in the Hebrew text, shawl. We have now reached the first of several passages within Chabaquwq that Sha'uwl deceitfully cited to press his case against the Torah. He used this one to suggest that he had not run in vain while attempting to discredit the word of God he was now misappropriating to prove his point. In a rational world, his argument was nonsensical, but he was peddling his religion to those who prized faith above reason, so it didn't matter. Then, Yahowah, God's name transliterated as guided by his Torah, instructions on his higher existence and his role in our Shalom, reconciliation as Eloah, Almighty God, answered me, Ana Eni, he responded to me, testifying by replying with useful information, Kalimperfect. He said, Ma, of your own volition, write down, Katab, use the alphabet to inscribe, choosing to describe in writing, Kalimperative, this revelation, Kazon, this communication from God regarding the agreement. Then, you can choose to expound upon it using those letters, you can explain its significance by plainly and clearly reiterating it using large and distinct alphabetic characters, upon, writing tablets, Harluvek, inscribing it on a panel or screen such that it is enduring and memorable, so that, for the express purpose and intent that, by summoning, welcoming, and reading this, by calling upon this, proclaiming it, and making it known by reciting and announcing it. He will run as he is chased away, ruse, he will flee, Kalimperfect third person masculine singular. Chabaquwq, embrace this, Habakkuk 2:2. Yahowah responds to those who listen to him. Anyone else is a waste of breath. Chabaquwq was clearly 622 agitated by what he had witnessed and wanted some reassurance that Yahowah was aware of the significance of the problem. Was ready with his response, which was to ask his prophet to chronicle what he was witnessing in his future, but now our past. He wanted it all written down and documented in advance of it occurring. But even in this, God encouraged his prophet to express himself, and to add his own reactions to the revelation. As a result, we are not just hearing from Yahowah, but also getting the reaction of his prophet, enriching the testimony with the human perspective. Having translated Yahowah's prophetic witness over the past 22 years, I have grown to appreciate his preference for using human conduits. Each prophet can draw from his own unique life experiences to present the revelations in ways that make it easier for us to relate to what they are seeing. Each conveys God's message using their own vocabulary and reacts to it individually, such that we are able to consider the same message from many viewpoints. There are two ways to interpret the final comment. The first is to expect Paul to read this and go away. Personally, I hope that he is compelled to read questioning Paul during his trial. And since he died miserable and alone in Rome, he was chased out of the promised land. Alternatively, Yahowah could be addressing his children, anticipating that they will eventually read this, and as a result, he is expecting that they will become so aggressively hostile to Sha'ul's rhetoric that they will chase even his legacy away. If done early enough, it would limit the ensuing carnage. And even now, these more accurate translations and expansive explanations enhance the credibility and appeal of Yada Yahowah such that the series becomes more effective in drawing God's people away from the toxicity of religion. 623 There is another insight here worth reinforcing. Yahowah has an overwhelming preference for the written word. It is more enduring in that it reads the same to us today as it would have the day it was written, never changing. It is more readily validated and thus proven reliable. And with a written text, we have all the time we need to make the proper associations to better understand the implications and appreciate the insights. Also, by using prophecy to affirm divine inspiration, the fact that the written word survives the test of time, unaltered becomes an essential part of the equation. The key to understanding is to make reasoned connections to what is said elsewhere in the prophets, so that we can more credibly develop and present God's panoramic landscape of our relationship with him over time. But that should not define the limits of our understanding, because it is by associating Yahowah's prophetic testimony with the world apart from him that we expand our horizons. For example, in the first 2 volumes of Yada Yahowah we compared what we could deduce from science and history to validate the explanations of creation and the flood. And now, it is by turning to the words of the devil's advocate that we come to more fully appreciate the specificity of this prophecy. The very reason that I turned my attention to Habakkuk in the first place, discovering Yahowah's rebuke of Sha'uwl, Paul, is that the father of lies misappropriates this pronouncement in 3 of his letters. Speaking of running, Paul claimed not to have run in vain in response to the dressing down he received during the Jerusalem Council. He would misrepresent this prophecy condemning him, such that it would be interpreted by the faithful as validating his preposterous propositions. We were initially drawn to it based upon what 624 Sha'uwl wrote in Galatians 2:2 and then reiterated in Philippians 2:16 and 1 Corinthians 9:26. Had the devil's advocate not flirted with his own indictment, I may have missed one of the most compelling prophecies ever written. But this is Satan's style. He is convinced that humankind is so stupid that he can flaunt the absurdity of his religious misappropriations in people's faces and they'll not recognize that he is behind them, using them to be worshipped as the lord of these religions. He's taunting God, degrading his creation while undermining the merit of the covenant. After all, who in their right mind would want to spend an eternity with people so stupid they would disavow 1,000 years of prophets and all of the benefits of the covenant only to replace it with Paul's pathetic drivel? It is akin to Sha'uwl admitting that he was demon-possessed and that the Roman government was a force for good. The lines of demarcation between good and evil have been established, and the consequence of being deceived is severe, so Yahowah left no doubt regarding this man, naming him, as we shall soon see, in this prophecy. This entire prediction has been positioned against one solitary individual, with he deployed throughout using the third-person masculine singular, because no one would be more harmful to God's people or lead more souls away from him than Sha'uwl, Paul. While there are a handful of individuals who will earn a rebuke of a somewhat similar magnitude, only one man meets all the criteria that has been provided, and he is a perfect fit, right down to his propensities, peculiarities, and proper name. Sha'uwl deceived billions regarding the mode, meeting times. He was in Yerushalayim, studying to be a rabbi, when Dowd was fulfilling the mode mikre, invitations to be called out and meet. And as the first to refer to himself as a rabbi, he did an about-face to attack God from an entirely new direction. 625 Sha'uwl even admitted to being conceited, to being demon-possessed, to being preoccupied with Gentiles, and to being opposed to circumcision, things which will loom large in a moment. Since it would be 6 centuries before Sha'uwl would question God's word earning his disapproval, Yahowah encouraged those who first read these words to be patient. This warning was for another day. Still indeed, the subsequent realization, KYO'd, so therefore and nonetheless, the expectation regarding the witness, of this revelation from God, kazon, of this divine communication, is for Ha-Mod, the eternal witness to the appointed meetings, La Ha-Mod, the continuing testimony regarding the meeting times to gather together and celebrate the agreement, from Mo, this pertains to the Ed, eternal witness, everlasting testimony, and enduring evidence. It provides a witness to and speaks, pouring out evidence to malign and insult, Puvak. It reveals facts which condemn and censure the puffery from the blowhard, Hyphal imperfect, at the very end, La Ha-Kes, toward the conclusion of time, specifically in the last days at the limit of the ordinary flow of time, from Katsats, to tear asunder and cut off, casting away. Even though it may seem slow to develop, the extended period of time required for this question to be resolved, Immaha, if hesitant, question him, because no matter how long it takes, from Ma, to ponder the who, what, why, when and how of this question, Hitpalpal imperfect Hitpale Jussive, he will continually and consistently do what is said of him and not allow anyone or anything to deter or dissuade him from perpetrating what he has chosen solely on his own initiative, will not invalidate it, Lo Kazab. Will not be disproven or shown to be untrue, Peel imperfect. 626 Expect him in this regard, Charkalahu, be certain concerning this and regarding his allure, hook, and trap, because indeed, KY, he will absolutely come and pursue this, Bo, he will certainly arrive upon the scene and make his appearance, Cal infinitive imperfect. He will not be delayed nor will he remain, Lower Char, he will not take longer than expected, live for a protracted duration of time, nor pursue a different agenda, Peel imperfect. Chabaquwq, embrace this, Habakkuk 2:3. The first four modim, witnesses to the appointed meeting times of Pesach, Matzah, Yikorim, and Shabuah were fulfilled by Daud, Yahweh's beloved son, in year 4000 year, more commonly known as 33 CE. In this way and at this moment, God enabled the covenant's promises. As the prophecy predicts, this was the time Sha'uwl was in Yerushalayim training to be a rabbi. Not long thereafter, he began undermining the modim, beginning with his letter to the Galatians around 52 CE. Also consistent with the prophecy, it would not be until recently, during the last days, as we approach the fulfillment of the final three modim that we are finally studying this prophecy and identifying it with Sha'uwl. Better late than never. This known, Yahweh's pronouncement regarding the mode isn't just about providing us with a historical frame of reference. God's revelation, and even our explanation of it, serves to defend the mode from Paul's criticisms of them. Yahweh is censuring Paul's rhetoric suggesting that they are passé. The witness God is offering maligns Sha'uwl instead. When Yahweh told Chabaquwq that this revelation provides a witness for the end of time and that the extended period required for this question to be resolved, would not prove it false, it became utterly absurd to project any of this 627 on Babylon. Clearly, God was not addressing what was going to occur in 6 years, from 615 to 609 BCE, but, instead, in 666 years, in 52 CE. Yahweh seems to enjoy providing hints which facilitate understanding among those who are observant, and which also make the process of learning more rewarding. In this case, the Maha question to be resolved was to Sha'uwl, question him. When we think about it, we can appreciate why God has to be a bit reserved. He does not want superficial readers who are not genuinely interested in getting to know him and becoming part of his family to ascertain something that they might exploit to their and others' detriment when considered out of context. Celebrating Pesach without Matzah, without being part of the covenant, would be catastrophic. Many of the insights we have derived along the way are the result of the breadth and depth of our study. We are rewarded when we consider everything in context, maintain the proper perspective, and yet still dig deep, turning over and examining every facet of each word we encounter along the way. In this regard, we should be cognizant that Yahweh's message had to resonate with everyone willing to diligently listen, from the beginning to the end. Dating events is a similar exercise. The calendar we use today had its genesis with the Romans nearly 600 years after this prophecy was written. And while they stole it from the Greeks who borrowed it from the Babylonians and Persians, that system did not exist when Chabaquwq provided this witness. Thankfully, however, dating the timing of events is straightforward. Yahweh provided us with his timeline from Bersith, in the beginning to the conclusion of Sukkah, camping out, with major fulfillments and minor occurrences documented along the way. 628 that said, his timeline is his own. It plays out over 40 Yawbel or 2,000-year increments, beginning with the expulsion from Eden in year 0. The Berith covenant was established in year 2000 year to facilitate our return. Then to provide the benefits of the covenant, the first 4 Mikrei, invitations to meet were fulfilled by the Messiah Daud in year 4000 year. The return to the garden occurs 2000 years later in 6000 year with the son's return to honor the promises of the final 2 modim. Superimposed on the resolutely religious and political apparatus in use today, these dates would be marked as 3968 BCE, 1968 BCE, 33 CE, and 2033 CE. God never writes something like 100 years before the classical Hellenistic period began. He would not date an event by paying homage to murderous pagans either. So, we do not find references to the Julian calendar established in 46 BCE by Julius Caesar or to Pope Gregory XIII's calendar composed in 1582 CE. Therefore, you will not read that, in 2022, Chabaquwq's revelation will be explained for your benefit. However, with this malevolence coinciding with the fulfillment of the mode, corrupting the intent to suggest that God would die, we can reasonably deduce that these events would have played out to the detriment of God's people in relatively close proximity to 33 CE, and that the principal actors would be Gentiles and, thus, Romans. And so, all indicators are pointed at the most egotistical and manipulative man of this day, the irrational and ruthless individual who claimed to speak for God while contradicting him. Sha'uwl, Paul was, by any standard, an audacious and arrogant pain in the ass. He deliberately corrupted this particular prophetic pronouncement indicting him, twisting and convoluting it to posture the opposite of its intent. And since Babylon doesn't have a soul and the object of Chabaquwq's denouncement had one that was decidedly 629 off kilter, we can dispense with the pretense that God was condemning an ancient kingdom rather than the principal author of the Christian New Testament. Pay attention, nay, behold, look up and consider the details because, he will be audacious, presumptuous, and oblivious, puffed up with false pride, a foolhardy pain in the ass, affle, his head will swell and he will be daring, becoming an oozing sore and pain in the butt, haughty and arrogant, heedless of the truth, reckless and riddled with venereal disease and hemorrhoidal abscesses. Paul perfect, the object, Sha'uwl, suffers the effects of these undesirable things although not for long. His soul and, thus, his way of looking at the world and responding to it, hue, his attitude and personality, his consciousness and character, is neither right nor straightforward, lo yashar, is inappropriate and counterproductive, unpleasant and inaccurate, is circuitous, prone to twisting and convoluting the teaching so as not to be on the level, dishonest and immoral, lacking integrity, in him, barhu. And therefore, as a result, it follows, and that is why, those who are correct and vindicated, tzaddik, those who are right, in accord with the truth, and upright, therefore innocent, through trusting and relying upon him, by being firmly established and upheld by him, in that he is dependable, trustworthy, and honest, by verifying the evidence he has provided, from a man, to be supported and confirmed by upholding the truth, will live, he will be restored to life and be kept alive. Nurtured and growing, even flourishing, kalim perfect. Chabaquwq, embrace this, Habakkuk 2:4. There is no comparison between the intelligence, character, and attitude of prophets like Chabaquwq, and especially Moses and Daud, but also Yashar, Yirmiah, Zachariah, Eliah, and Hosea, as opposed to 630 the blithering idiot who wrote and inspired most of the Christian New Testament. He was as presumptuous as he was oblivious, an audacious pustule impersonating a person. Reckless with the truth, full of himself, in foolhardy fashion, Sha'uwl, Paul tried to impersonate God and came off looking like Satan. If ever a man could rightly be called an affle, pain in the ass, it is this one. As to whether affle, being riddled with the oozing abscesses associated with venereal disease and suffering from hemorrhoids was intended metaphorically or as a medical diagnosis, or both, you can be the judge. But in either case, since Yahowah is about to reveal Paul's overt fascination with male genitalia, as a homosexual, it had to make his life miserable. And in this regard, Sha'uwl was a hypocrite and, thus, anything but straightforward in his condemnation of homosexuality. Babylon did not have an soul, nor does Sha'uwl, hell. Sha'uwl did, although, to be fair, it is currently vacationing in Sha'uwl. Therefore, this dire warning has not been about a miserable empire or a more miserable place but, instead, the most miserable of people. An soul provides animals, including humans, with the capacity to observe the world and respond to it. This consciousness animates life while conveying the unique perspective, attitude, character, and attributes of each individual. No two are exactly alike, with some being better than others. As an animal or, more correctly, a beast, Sha'uwl had a soul. His consciousness however, was dysfunctional, a problem aggravated by an inoperative neshama, conscience. This horrendous pairing became uniquely delusional when influenced by Satan. This led to Yahowah's testimony being twisted and convoluted in an inappropriate and counterproductive manner, similar to what Satan had done to mislead Towrah in the garden. The 631 result this time was Christianity with Paul as its prophet and Satan starring in the role of God. While this religious concoction would serve as a death sentence for those Sha'uwl beguiled into believing his nonsense, and became a living hell for those they tormented, life could still be worth living. Therefore, God is reminding those who are willing to listen to him that being correct matters. Those who are right about Yahowah, trust him. And by relying upon God, they live. When we know what Yahowah said, men like Paul cannot fool us by misappropriating it. This is and always has been the antidote for religion, especially Paul's faith. In Galatians 3:11, in the midst of his initial assault against the Torah, Sha'uwl misquoted this prophecy, the very one which expressly condemns him. Removing it from its context and truncating it, he used his perverted variation to promote his faith, writing, "But because with regard to the nomos, Torah absolutely no one is vindicated or justified by God becomes evident because, those who are vindicated and righteous out of faith will live." Paul was guilty of misquoting the evidence and with a non sequitur, in that, even if his errant citation were true, his conclusion cannot be derived from it. It was like saying, by drinking water, no one is satisfied with the substance because those who climb mountains are barefoot. No, they're not, and what does one have to do with the other? It is similar to Satan misleading Towrah, who at the time was unaware of anything troubling, that if you eat something bad, you'll be like God. But all she became was a worse version of herself. As is often the tendency of a daredevil when challenging the spectre of death, Sha'uwl was so transfixed by this damning and deadly prophecy regarding him that 632 he cited it once more, this time at the beginning of his most famous letter, for in it the righteousness of God is revealed from belief to belief, as it has been written, "But the righteous shall live by belief." Romans 1:17, Sha'uwl and Satan were taunting God. In this way, their collective arrogance is unmatched. Let's be clear, Yahowah provided two prerequisites for living, and belief and faith were not among them. To be tzaddik is to be right. Tzaddik speaks of being correct and thus vindicated. And the only way to be right is to know the truth. But when we know, we have no use for faith. In God's two-step plan, being right is essential but not necessarily sufficient. For example, I can know that the airplane off of the island departs at noon every day, but if I don't get on it, that knowledge isn't going to get me anywhere. So Yahowah is not only asking us to correctly assess who he is, what he is offering, and what he expects in return, he wants us to trust him. This is so important, it is one of the conditions for participating in the covenant. It is by relying upon a correct assessment of what Yahowah has conveyed to us that our lives are restored. God said, therefore, those who are correct and vindicated, tzaddik, through trusting and relying upon him, live, chaya. He did not say, those who are vindicated and righteous out of faith will live. Nor did he write, but the righteous shall live by belief. If he had, he would have contradicted himself and, thereby, invalidated any possibility of salvation, Torah or faith. For those who are informed and rational, Paul has demonstrated that he is dishonest and irrational and cannot be trusted. And yet, Yahowah had more to share through Chabaquwq. In particular, there are 6 specific details in this next prophetic statement that implicate Sha'uwl long 633 before he incriminated himself. But one clue, in particular, removes any doubt about who God is warning us because Yahowah identifies his foe by his given name. If you are a Christian, you may want to pay attention to this and be forewarned, Yahowah is addressing a mortal man with a soul, not a place, and as such, God is condemning Sha'uwl, not Sha'uwl. However, on the other hand, this is frustrating, but by contrast and as a tremendous disappointment, because, for the reason that, the intoxicating and inebriating spirit, the consequence of the fermented alcohol in the wine and resulting intemperance and drunkenness, of the mortal man, the individual human being, of deceptive infidelity and treacherous betrayal, who is untrustworthy, unprincipled, and unreliable, of traitorous abandonment without justification through chicanery, trickery, and deceit, and who alters his outward appearance, pretending to be other than what he is by wearing covert clothing, is an overbearing moral failure of unwarranted self-importance, is an arrogant, meritless, and presumptive, high-minded and conceited individual aggrandizing himself. Therefore, he will not achieve a desirable result, come home, or find peace, he will not succeed, achieve his aim, or reach his goal, nor will he enjoy the company of the shepherd and sheep, nor ever be beautifully adorned so as to abide and dwell forevermore. Imperfect, whoever is open to the broad and popular path, rachab, when one is receptive to the wide open and expansive, public and common, contrived, opportunistic, and improper, way, associated with, according to, Sha'uwl. Question that which is catastrophically devastating the personal name of the individual in question, but also the name of the place of separation, the realm of the dead, the dominion of 634 questioning, Sha'uwl, Sha'uwl and Sha'uwl are written identically in the Hebrew text. Consider Strong's H7585 and H7586, from Sha'uwl, to question and shorn, hysterical and boisterous uproar which is catastrophically devastating. He and his soul, depesh, his essential essence, his consciousness, character, attitude, inner nature, and personality, are like, can be compared to, the plague of death, Harmorth, the pandemic disease that kills a large population of people, a debilitating pestilence. And so, those who are drawn in by him, accepting him, Asaph, those who are taken in by him and join him, those who are removed and withdrawn by assembling with him, victimized by him, will never be satisfied. Lo Saba, he will not find contentment nor fulfillment, based upon 8 Hevchi among the Dead Sea Scrolls, he will not be satisfied versus and will not be satisfied. Every ethnicity and, thus, all of the Gentiles, Shurl Ha-Goim, every race and place, he will claim as his own, Kabatzel, he will designate, grasp hold of, obtain, assemble, and collect for himself, with followers from every nation, Shurl Ha-Am, with people from everywhere. Chabaquwq, embrace this, Habakkuk 2:5. No doubt, this had to be frustrating for God. The religious gibberish of a mortal man, an awful one at that, would be venerated as scripture, even when overtly besmirching his own testimony. Perhaps Satan was right, humans were too stupid to be worth the effort. How is it that the unprincipled and unreliable are so intoxicating? Why do so many find deception alluring and betrayal captivating? Is there a reason that the overbearing and unprincipled prevail in national elections? 635. Is it any wonder that we humans continue to make the same mistakes and never seem to achieve anything worthy and enduring? Should we be surprised that so few Jews know the way home? Is it a surprise that the world remains engulfed in so many useless wars? And specifically, with Sha'uwl, Paul called out by name and described as the plague of death, are we to assume that the 2.5 billion Christians are stupid? Does anyone listen to God? Religion generally and Christianity specifically is rachab, popular and thus common, broad in its appeal and open in its interpretations. It is contrived and opportunistic, adversely affecting more people than governments and their militaries. One of the most arrogant things Sha'uwl would claim is every ethnicity, every Gentile for himself, and over time, they were drawn to him, accepting him over Yahowah. And so, of the billions of souls that Paul took away from God, not one was satisfied. There are no Christians in heaven. Turns out, Paul lied. And as it turns out, there is no correlation between popularity and validity. Should a Christian be allowed to peek through a window into heaven, they would find it unfulfilling. There would be no worship services, no prayers, no praise, no Bible studies, no crosses or churches, no believers or Trinity, no pastors or priests, no Lord, Jesus Christ, or Holy Ghost, no Queen of Heaven or Mother of God, no baptism or communion, no Christmas or Easter, and a lot more Jews than Gentiles. They would see Yahowah, Moses, and Daud, the Torah, Berith, and Mikra, and hear Hebrew, individuals and concepts unfamiliar to them. Proving Yahowah's point, in 1 Corinthians 11:20-21, Sha'uwl, Paul tells those who have joined his assembly not to participate in Passover, resulting in the ultimate plague of death. It is a treacherous betrayal of Yahowah's 636 instructions regarding the narrow path he and his Son provided to salvation. While the Sermon on the Mount was falsely attributed to Jesus, should it have been conveyed, it would have been Daud who warned his people about the wolf in sheep's clothing who would seek to invalidate the Torah. He would label Paul's approach Asher Rachab, the broad and popular way to death. Turns out, he was quoting from Chabaquwq 2-5. When the root words that comprise a name reveal that we should Sha'uwl, question that which is catastrophically devastating, one would think that it would raise more eyebrows than hearts, encouraging more doubts than donations. And when that name is also equivalent to hell, especially when the individual in question claimed to be demon-possessed, one would have expected more rejection than acceptance. Then when this is coupled with the most scathing denunciation of any person found anywhere in the prophets, it is hard to imagine that the resulting religion would appeal to so many. So, while the following continues to identify the culprit, Christians remain oblivious to Yahowah's prophecy regarding them or him. Why don't any of them ask these questions about him? Ha lo ale shurl hemel hu. Why are so few of them against him? Terse references to the word they lift up as taunts to ridicule, martial nasa, simplistic and contrived equivalencies, often easy to remember aphorisms, clichés, dictates, and adages, become bywords with implied associations with that which is well known to mock and to exercise dominion through comparison and counterfeit are raised, along with, elusive sayings and undecipherable interpretations which misappropriate the intended meaning, malice, 637 derisive words wrapped in enigmas arrogantly spoken. Even that which is unfathomable, There are hard and perplexing questions which need to be asked of him, Kidalahu, there are difficult enigmas to be solved, dark and hidden secrets, and double dealings, to be known regarding him. And, Wah, moreover, they should say, Amar, they should declare, Woe, Howie, alas, expressing a dire warning, to the one who claims to be great so as to increase his offspring, acting like a rabbi, Rabbah, to the one who thrives on numbers and who considers himself exceedingly important, constantly exalting himself, the basis of rabbi, something Sha'uwl claimed to be, neither of which apply to him, Lo Lahu, which is not his. In the meantime, for how long, Admathe, until when, will they make pledges, Abtite, will they be in debt, based upon his significance, Kabed al-Hu, pursuant to the weight and burden of his testimony, and the grievous honor afforded him. Chabaquwq, embrace this, Habakkuk 2:6. The Qumran witness does not include the phrase Admathe, for how long before the last sentence, turning a rhetorical question into a simple statement of fact. It then becomes, they continue to make pledges based upon his significance. Sha'ul's modus operandi was to justify his elusive sayings through terse references to the word. His mocking interpretations were all arrogantly spoken. His arguments were simplistic and contrived, resulting in the most popular counterfeit ever foisted against humanity, one bolstered by his always present clichés. He even claimed to bear offspring, experiencing birth pangs to deliver the descendants of his belief system. And as is the case with most deceivers, Paulos made pledges 638, and demanded that believers hold them and him in the highest esteem. He even claimed that he was the co-savior, completing the sacrifice and message. As expected, the faithful would follow their Pied Piper and imitate his mind-numbing approach to warding off informed and rational criticisms. The religious are professional quote miners, cherry pickers, and word salad tossers. Armed with adages, equipped with equivalencies, and clichés contrived for the occasion, believers are prepared to fend off the word of God to protect their faith. When it comes to indecipherable interpretations and misappropriations of the intended meaning, no one is more elusive or derisive than Christian apologists. Doing Paul proud, Twistians are an enigma wrapped in a riddle. Channeling his inner Elier, your guide slashing his way through the jungle of religious rhetoric would have you know that the religious are incapable of questioning their faith. They could no more hold Paul accountable for lying to them than they could solve the mystery of the thorn in his side. Woe to the one pretending to be a rabbi as well as to the many claiming the title. It is akin to putting a sign on one's head saying "Do not trust me." Beyond God's overt hatred of all religious proponents, and particularly rabbis, actual or pretend, he is unimpressed with numbers and disdains that which is popular. Given the choice between going on a voyage of discovery with 1,000,000 Jews or just his son, Daud, God's preference is as obvious as the many are oblivious. Sha'uwl dismissed, and demeaned all those who would dare question him. He claimed that, by challenging him, a person was actually demonstrating their animosity toward God, and that by implication, such a person was serving Satan. Although the opposite is true, most Christians fall for this ad hominem ploy, rejecting evidenced argument 639 against their religion, and its author by claiming that the critic is hellbent. Believers routinely commit the logical fallacies of ad hominem, non sequitur, red herring, and straw man. Using the ad hominem fallacy, they readily discard a valid proposition by demeaning the messenger. For example, Muslims were never able to refute anything in Prophet of Doom, so they critiqued the best documented, most comprehensive, contextual, and chronological presentation of Muhammad's words and deeds by profane attacks on my character. 1,000 pages of evidence were discarded with a flippant, "The author is a bastard, a money-grubbing and satanically inspired Jew." With the non-sequitur approach, the faithful make general statements that are widely accepted, but such statements, regardless of their veracity, do not support their premise. It is this disassociation that makes the argument fallacious. As an example, since God's word is eternal, that proves that my Bible is inerrant. With the red herring fallacy, rather than deal with the evidence brought against their religion, believers try to distract people's attention from it. For instance, rather than deal with Paul's admission that he was insane, a person deploying this fallacy will say something like, "You can't tell me that I don't have a relationship with Jesus or that Christ isn't my savior." And finally, as the straw man fallacy implies, rather than attempt to refute the case that has been presented, the apologist will errantly convey their opponent's argument, and then attack the fabricated construct. Someone deploying this fallacy would disprove the creation account by criticizing religious interpretations of it rather than addressing the actual Hebrew text Yahowah inspired. Before we press on, here is a summary of where we have just been. Of Sha'uwl, Yahowah revealed. 640 upon, my requirements and responsibilities, Mishmarith Eni, I have decided of my own initiative that I will literally and continually stand, Amod. And, Wah, I will choose to always remain firm and present, continually being ready and able to serve, Yazab, upon, Al, that which strengthens, protects, and fortifies, Matsor. Therefore, Wah, I will be on the lookout, Spur, in order to see, La Ra, what he will say about me, Ma Dabar Bar Eni. So then, Wah, how can I be expected to change my attitude, thinking, or response, Ma Shub, concerning, Al, my disapproving rebuke and desire to correct the record, Tokeketh Eni. Chabaquwq 2-1. Then, Wah, Yahowah, answered me, Anna Eni. He said, Wah Ma, of your own volition, write down, Katab, this revelation, Kazon. Then, Wah, you can choose to expound upon it using those letters, Va, upon, Al, writing tablets, Ha Luvak, so that, Laman, by summoning, welcoming, and reading this, Kara by Hugh, he will run, quickly departing and chased away, Ruse. Chabaquwq 2-2. Still indeed, the subsequent realization, Kyod, of this revelation from God, Kazon, is for Harmod, the eternal witness to the appointed meetings, La Harmod. It provides a witness to and speaks, pouring out evidence to censure and malign, Povak, at the very end, La Harkes. Even though it may seem slow to develop, the extended period of time required for this question to be resolved, Immaha, will not invalidate it, Lo Azab. Expect him in this regard, Chaka Lahu, because indeed, Ky, he will absolutely come and pursue this, Bobo. He will not be delayed nor will he remain, Loa Cha. Chabaquwq 2-3. 641 Pay attention, he will be audacious, presumptuous, and oblivious, puffed up with false pride, a foolhardy pain in the ass riddled with venereal disease and hemorrhoidal abscesses for being reckless, affle. His soul, his way of looking at the world and responding to it, Nipesh Hu, is not right or straightforward, as it is inappropriate and counterproductive, Lo Yashar, in him, Wah Hu. And therefore, Wah, those who are correct and vindicated, Zadik, through trusting and relying upon him, Ba Emuna Hu, will live, Shea. Chabaquwq 2-4. However, on the other hand, this is frustrating, Waf, because, Ky, the intoxicating and inebriating spirit, Yain, of the mortal man, Geber, of deceptive infidelity and treacherous betrayal, Bagad, is an overbearing moral failure of unwarranted self-importance, Yah. Therefore, Wah, he will not achieve a desirable result, come home, or find peace, Lo Nawa, whoever is open to the broad and popular path, Asher Rachab, associated with, Ka, Sha'uwl, questioning the hysterical and boisterous uproar which is catastrophically devastating, Sha'uwl. He and his soul, Nipesh Hu Wah Hu, are like, Ka, the plague of death, Harmoith. And so, Wah, those who are drawn in by him, accepting him, Asaph El Hu, will never be satisfied, Lo Saba. Every ethnicity of the Gentiles from every race and place, Shurl Ha-Gawim, he will claim as his own and for himself, Kabat El Hu, with followers from every nation, Shurl Ha-Am. Chabaquwq 2-5. 642 Why don't any of them ask these questions about him, Ha-Lo Alay Shurl Hem El Hu. Terse references to the word they lift up as taunts to ridicule, Marshal Nasser, along with, Wah, elusive sayings and undecipherable interpretations which misappropriate the intended meaning, malice. There are hard and perplexing questions which need to be asked of him, Kida Lahu. And, Wah, they should say, Amar, Woe, Howie, to the one who claims to be great so as to increase his offspring, acting like a rabbi, Rabah, neither of which apply to him, Lo Lahu. In the meantime, for how long, Admathe, will they make pledges, Abtite, based upon his significance, Kabed al-Hu. Chabaquwq, embrace this, Habakkuk 2:6. This next statement is associated with the previous prediction. It is rendered from the Dead Sea Scrolls because the Qumran text differs considerably from the Masoretic Text. Why not immediately, right now, even if only for a short period of time, Harlow Peter, why not at this moment and spontaneously, even unexpectedly, rise up and take a stand, accomplish something worthwhile and enduring, because, Wah, he is loading himself down, Tarn, he burdens himself, with, dark and wicked, a feeler, thick and obscuring, mud, tyt, dirt and dust to be swept away, from 8 Hevchi because the Masoretic Text has Abtite Otter, your heavy debt and the 70 Septuagint reads loads his yoke. Your oppressors, Nashak Otter, those controlling you financially and who are collecting money from you, 643 will be alerted, why Yakats, they will wake up and be aroused, such that they will be afraid of you, Zua Otter, with you causing them to be concerned and react. Otherwise, Wah, you will be, higher, victimized by them, La Mashes Alahem, spoiled and robbed by them. Chabaquwq, embrace this, Habakkuk 2:7. What are God's people afraid of? Why not join us and take a stand against Paul and Christianity? The religion has buried itself and is stuck in the mud, so what is their recourse? When you are with Yah, what does it matter who is against you? The truth is a powerful weapon. Nothing is more effective than words wisely wielded. We are fast approaching a time of economic collapse, of the empowered seeking to control everyone and everything through debt, which is what fiat currencies represent. Having destroyed their value with mounting national debt and gross overspending, they will even forgive personal debt to compel the unwitting to accept their new electronic currency during the Great Reset. So, God is hoping that there will be a counter to their contrivance, someone who isn't afraid to speak against them. And if not, if the voices are mooted and few, then the worst of men will victimize the many, spoiling and robbing them. I'm often asked what we should do to prepare for global economic collapse. My answer is always the same. Listen to Yahowah. Trust him. Accept the conditions of the covenant and attend the mikra. Even better, after doing so, stand up for Yahowah and join us in calling his people home. Yahowah likes courageous and compassionate souls who are willing to stand up against all forms of corruption, 644 political, religious, military, conspiratorial, and economic. We are to confront lies and liars. Throughout his letters, we find Paul routinely soliciting money from believers. It is one of many reasons Christian clerics embrace him. Following his example, Christian institutions have made merchandise of men. Therefore, Yah is trying to rouse his victims before it is too late. Then, you, otter, will be plundered, impoverished, and preyed upon, Sha'uwl, you will be looted and wronged, seized and victimized, by an enormous number of, rab, a great many in the fashion of the rabbis, Gentiles, Goim, people from different races and places, and, therefore, from the despises, they will seize, harass, and disparage you, Sha'uwl otter, they will impoverish and victimize you, entirely confiscating the wealth of the remaining, yether, taking everything of value from the remnant of the surviving, people, of those who are related by kinship, as a result of, men, from and because of, the bloodlust, of humankind, Adam, of mankind, with, the violent and cruel destructive forces terrorizing, Shema, the immoral maiming and murdering which oppress, the land. Eres the promised land, singular, and thus Yisrael, Yah's city, Kriya, to encounter Yah, Yerushalayim, the source of teaching regarding reconciliation, also singular, from Kara, to encounter and meet Yah, an abbreviation of Yahowah, and all, Sha'uwl, who dwell in her, Yashab Bahai, who inhabit and live in Yerushalayim. Chabaquwq 2:8. This is a warning, woe, to one who covets ill-gotten gain, and would do anything to take advantage, promoting that which is dishonest while performing, batsa, to one who is manipulative 645 and divisive, an unjust profiteer, greedy and deadly, evil, advancing that which is undesirable and counterproductive in cahoots with his unprincipled colleagues, that which is harmful and immoral, maligning and malignant, improper and injurious, on behalf of his clan and his covenant, hu. Concerning the establishment of his familial order, to position, sim, to arrange and set, his construct, conhu, of his dwelling place nest, and chamber, this abode of his jealousy, in the heights of heaven, elevating and associating the exalted position above everything else, snatching it away from, to take it by plundering, the reach, the hands, palms, grasp, and control, of the unfortunate adversarial brethren, of the afflicted residing in close proximity. Chabaquwq, embrace this, Habakkuk 2:9. This is exactly what occurred, not only as a result of the two particularly vicious Roman invasions but, also, speaks of the prolonged assault of the world's largest organization, the Roman Catholic Church, impoverishing and victimizing Jews for nearly a score of centuries. Muslim atrocities were also barbarous and prolonged, and they were followed by inhumane treatment perpetrated by Nazis and communists. Estranged from the Almighty, during this interminably long time out for being religious, Jews would be harassed, disparaged, and victimized by Goim of every ilk. Their land would be confiscated, their possessions taken, and their freedoms deprived. And yet, battered and bruised, a remnant would survive, and read these words. You, will overcome the worst terror humankind can muster. Then one day, you will be prepared to meet your Maker, to be welcomed home, to be greeted by Yahowah, to receive the ultimate reward. The warning which follows was directed at Sha'uwl, Paul, but it was not for him, nor even for his partner in 646 crime. God would not speak to him on this day or any day, that is until he demands recompense and then sends his sorry soul to Sha'uwl. Therefore, this Howie is for Yahweh. Do not allow yourself to be another of his casualties. The carnage of Christianity has been egregious, but to the devil his due. He sought to be seen above the Most High, to be worshipped as if he were God. He would say his covenant was heavenly, positioning it to snatch the one and only Berith away from the chosen people, with his Gaum replacing Yahweh and Satan rising above Yahowah. That was the plan, but God will not allow it, nor will I, nor should you. It is time we condemn the devil and take his apostle and religion down with him. It is time for Yahweh to live up to their calling, to be as Yahowah intended. Paul mercilessly attacks Jews throughout his letters, making them the enemy of his new religion, thereby creating the anti-Semitism that ultimately took root in the Christian church. Paul, a Roman citizen, seeded the hatred of God's chosen people that boiled over 70 years later with the destruction of Israel and Yerushalayim by the empire's legions. It happened just as Yahowah predicted it would. 684 years, from the time this prophecy was committed to writing, Yerushalayim was besieged and the house of Yahowah was destroyed. 63 years later, all of Yahweh was ransacked and those not murdered by Rome were hauled off into slavery. But the bloodbath is not over. There will be a final assault against the promised land and Yah's city, Yerushalayim. Christians, backing and arming Muslims, and then communists, will seek to destroy Jerusalem and decimate Jews in the waning hours of the time of 647 Jacob's troubles. There will be shamar, violent cruelty and terrorism. We have read how Paul pretended to be whatever was deemed expeditious to gain an advantage over others. Such is the implication of batsa, taking advantage in the process of soliciting ill-gotten gain. But its considerable wealth won't do him much good in Sha'uwl. I don't suspect $1 billion will buy a cold brew, or pack of smokes. One of the problems of instituting a cult following, and inspiring them to plunder others on one's behalf, is that, in the end, the bribed help is never reputable. Swords swing both ways and thieves are prone to steal from the most convenient source. Sha'ul's feeble attempts to keep the grubby paws of his unfortunate and adversarial brethren at bay will ultimately fail. Oblivious to their rendezvous with destiny, the Roman Catholic Church, which was founded on Pauline doctrine, not only constructs gold-laden cathedrals and has storehouses filled with tens of billions of dollars of stolen plunder. They have positioned themselves as having sole possession of the keys to Paul's heaven. It is interesting, however, that recently they have had to return billions of dollars to the families of children their priests have molested, priests following the Pauline mandate not to marry, bankrupting dioceses. Yahowah's next line is a succinct, unambiguous, and damning summation of Sha'uwl and Satan leaguing together to conceive Christianity. It is what we read in Galatians, Corinthians and Romans, and as such, there is no reason to speculate on the fate of his soul or of those who have joined him. You have deliberately decided upon and conspired at the advice of another to devise and promote an ignominious plot to confuse by substituting 648 Yatsbosheth, you, masculine singular, after consultation, have come to an informed conclusion through deliberation to conceive and perpetrate a lowly plan with the intended purpose to confound while displaying an adversarial attitude to replace, Bosheth, shameful, lowly, and confusing is from Bosh, to shamefully confound and disappoint. Those who approach your house, La Baithota, those who are associated with your clan and covenant, by scraping away, cutting off, and destroying, Katsa, severely injuring, maiming, decreasing, and devastating, ending the existence of, the preponderance of the family along with many other people, Amrab, the rabbis and their followers, most of the nation of related kin. And so, why you have forfeited, Shatter, you bear the loss by impugning guilt through missing the way, surrendering, your soul, Nipeshota, your, masculine singular, consciousness. Chabaquwq, embrace this, Habakkuk 2:10. Paul deliberately, and with malice, perpetrated the most debilitating crime in human history. He fraudulently misled billions of Gentiles, telling them that, as part of his church, they had replaced Jews as the chosen people. As a result, they were encouraged, through his ignominious plot, to rob and harass those of the Old Covenant. With the greedy hands of the Jews scraped away from any connection with his God, he would inspire their eradication. This hideous plot, however, required slandering the old God, making him unethical and vindictive. But no matter, because confused by the plot Sha'uwl contrived in partnership with Satan, even the sins of persecuting, enslaving, robbing, and murdering Yahweh were forgiven. The Graces, now dancing to the Pied Piper of Christianity, would be the most accommodating goddesses. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. 649 Paul's Baith, clan and covenant was an invalid replacement for Yahowah's eternal Berith, family-oriented covenant relationship with Yisrael. Sha'ul's Baith, household would become known as the New Covenant as proclaimed in his New Testament. But it would be nothing but a pile of lies, a means to substitute Paul for Moses, Jesus for Daud, the Lord for Yahowah, and Christians for Yisrael, replacing the Torah and prophets with the gospel of Saint Sha'uwl, and in the process, Twistians would substitute life for death and Shamaim for Sha'uwl. It was a Faustian bargain with a couple of disingenuous devils. Explaining his response using word pictures, we read, "Indeed, KY, truly as a result, the building stone, Eben, the building block of the home, the cornerstone, and the tablet of stone, from Banar, to build and restore the family name and home for the children, from Min, the wall supporting the house, Ka, the protective divide for the family, will cry out, issuing a proclamation, Zark, will project a summons for an assembly meeting as a call to arms, Kalim perfect. And, Wa, the infrastructure of connecting rafters and beams, Kafis, the integrated girders comprising the finished structure of a home, of, Min, timber, Etz, the carpenter's work with the wooden planks of the tree, will answer and respond to this, Anahai, will choose to make a public declaration, providing a contextual reply to it, Kalim perfect energic non jussif. Chabaquwq 2:11. Woe to, Howie, a strong warning to, the one who establishes, Banar, the one who builds and constructs, Kal participle, a population of anguishing individuals and a shrine to agitation and incitement, Ir, a haunt for asses, and a temple complex in a city, Ur, to provoke, inflame, goad, and terrorize, stirring up trouble 650 inches blood, Bar dam, through death, from damam, to destroy by making deaf and dumb. He fashions and forms Wakun, he proposes, prepares, promotes, establishes and supports, whole perfect, a populated institution for meeting and preaching, Kriya, a place to assemble for sermons, from Kara and Karia, to assemble, encounter, and meet to listen to the message, a building and its furnishings as part of an institution where people congregate for preaching, based upon that which is perverted and incorrect, invalid and unjust, bar Allah, in wickedness with evil intent, inappropriately damaging and corrupting through deviant means. Chabaquwq, embrace this, Habakkuk 2:12. Yahowah built something special for us, a covenant home here on earth and in heaven. It is perfect and everlasting. So, its stones and timbers are crying out in response to the one tearing all of this down, denouncing this pathetic attempt to replace restoration and reconciliation with agitation and incitement. The resulting institutionalized religion became as popular as it remains disingenuous, a place to meet and preach a perverted reverie in opposition to God. Ironically, that which believers are told is the inerrant word of their God is actually all ash, incorrect, invalid, and inappropriate. Sha'ul's, Paul's edifice, which has become known as the church, would deviate massively from Yahowah's intent. It wasn't until reading Paul's speeches, and considering his influence on the inflammatory content of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and Acts, that I came to appreciate how inciting and agitating his approach was toward Jews. Christianity's anti-Yahowah, anti-Yahweh, anti-Torah, anti-Berith, and anti-Modim composition is appalling. 651 This known, in most English Bibles you will find both Ir and Kriya rendered as city as if they were translating a repetition of the same word. But considering Yahowah's prowess for effective communication, when we find different words being deployed to convey unique ideas, it is in our interest to examine the etymology to distinguish between them. In that Ir is from Ur, we discover that it addresses the problem of religion, blinding believers such that they are unable to perceive the failures of their faith even when clearly exposed. This root reveals how Christians have been incited to perpetrate terrorist acts upon Jews, anguishing them. Also, in that Kriya is a derivative of Kara and related to Karia, in this word's history, we encounter the foundation and furnishings of a popular institution where many people congregate to listen to preaching. These are loaded terms with Pauline implications. There is a much better choice. Why not pay attention, Halohine, why not look up and consider this, to that which is from, Mineth, by means of approaching and in accompaniment with, Yahowah, a transliteration of Yahovah as instructed in his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence, of the spiritual implements, Zaba, of the vast array of heavenly envoys who serve as effective messengers. But instead, Wa, the people, Am, the family, expend their energy and grow weary, Yuga, they toil and labor, growing tired and becoming exhausted, Kal imperfect, amidst a profuse conglomeration, Bar day, amongst a great excess and abundance, of worthless trifling, Esh, of that which is combustible and consuming, yet trivial and has no value. 652 Those united under an antiquated system, Waleam, a community congregating under common leadership, exhaust and destroy themselves, Yaf, are worn out, fatigued and weakened, into excessive emptiness and extravagant delusions, Bardaik, into endless fantasies and an overabundance of vain misrepresentations. Chabaquwq 2:13. I appreciate Chabaquwq. After witnessing Sha'ul's blasphemy and resulting carnage, he interrupts the flow of his nauseating presentation of human malfeasance with a simple question: why not pay attention to that which comes from Yahowah? It's better than Paul, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, in addition to any conglomeration of rabbis, by a factor of the entire universe to a speck of sand, and that's being generous. Here, am can mean people, family, or nation, although it typically speaks of Yisrael. Therefore, due to the rules Paul has imposed on Christians, and those rabbis have sanctioned against Jews in their Talmud, the people toil for nothing. Laim addresses large populations which gather or congregate together under an antiquated system following a religious or political leader. It is often used in conjunction with Rome. This addresses the origins of Pauline Christianity, where Babylonian myths were interwoven alongside misappropriated citations from the Torah and prophets to create the illusion that its claims were credible. But no matter how fervently one believes in fantasies, it is all for naught. As an interesting aside, esh, the word translated as worthless trifling, also speaks of that which is trivial yet combustible. This addresses religious drudgery, in particular the long list of laborious rules that have been established by rabbis to burden Jews. 653 And once again, there is a better, more satisfying and fulfilling choice. Indeed, this is reliable and true. She will edify and completely satisfy, male, she will impart an abundance of that which is healthy, valuable, empowering, and satisfying, filling, nifil imperfect, the land, ha-eres, the realm, region, and earth, with the knowledge, la yada, with the revelation and appreciation, the familiarity and awareness, kal infinitive or Yahowah, written as directed by his Torah, teaching regarding his higher, existence, significance, glorious presence, and abundant value. Eth kabod, splendor, honor, power, status, and reward, similar to the way water, hominem, is a cover, kasa, upon the sea, al-yam. Chabaquwq, embrace this, Habakkuk 2:14, she refers to the maternal manifestation of God's nature, the Ruwach Qodesh, set-apart spirit. Our spiritual mother makes us appear perfect before God by adorning us in her garment of light. She not only helped God fulfill the mikra, she also enriches and empowers the covenant's children, enlightening us with an abundance of valuable information. She equips us to better know Yah, and she makes it possible for us to enter his presence. It's reassuring to hear that the Ruwach Qodesh recognizes Yada Yahowah as significant, even meaningful, because it serves to reveal Yahowah's glorious presence. Water is inseparable from the sea. They are one and the same. This is how our relationship with Yahowah ought to be. It should transform our lives so that we reflect his nature, attitude, and light. The upcoming statement contains our third woe, and woes are never good. This time, however, Paul's hypocrisy regarding his sexual orientation is found to be particularly appalling. The plague of death 654 condemned homosexuality, but he was himself a homosexual. And while a person's sexual preferences, up to but excluding the abuse of others, are irrelevant to God, both contrived condemnations of homosexuality are mistranslated. Paul was being disingenuous, intoxicating and drugging his victims. The sexual orientation of the devil's advocate became apparent when, after railing against circumcision in Yerushalayim, on the way out of town, in Acts 16:1-3, Paul personally circumcised Timothy, his life partner and lover. It was a stunning admission considering his incessant rants against this condition of the covenant and, thus, insanely hypocritical. And that is likely why Yahowah affirmed what I had perceived, not to out Paul for being a homosexual but, instead, to reveal the fact that the father of Christianity was a sexual predator, pervert, drunkard, and manipulative phony. In the midst of Yahowah's scathing reprimand of Sha'uwl, Paul, this gets very personal for Chabaquwq. He goes from condemning the plague of death in third person, he, to second person, you, as if judging Sha'uwl directly. Woe to, Howie, this is a warning to, the one who pours out evil, causing his miserable companions and disagreeable fellow citizens to drink that which is toxic, Shakarahu, the one who supplies an intoxicating brew to his malignant co-conspirators, hyphal participle, in an explicit and demonstrable manner he causes his victims to consume that which intoxicates and hinders them, gathering and joining them together in a religious and political association, Tsapah, apportioning a share while exposing them. Peel participle, the object suffers the effect in dramatic fashion, of your debilitating antagonism, paralyzing perversions, and crippling venom, Chemoota, your injurious rage and deadly 655 rancor, your serpentine toxin while being all worked up emotionally with your life in turmoil. And much more than this, YF, if your resentment and animosity were not enough, providing intoxicants to the point of incapacitation, shakar, inebriating to influence, weakening the mind to impair judgment, for the express purpose of, laman, for no other reason than, gazing upon while demonstrating a preference for, nabatal, looking at while considering the desire for, hyphal infinitive, to continually influence them such that they share his highly demonstrative, and ongoing affinity for, their genitals, ma or hem, their male genitalia, the private parts of a man's or boy's body, specifically being naked and exposed, embarrassed for sexual activity, from ma, to question and being exposed, bared, and made to be naked. Chabaquwq, embrace this, Habakkuk 2:15. The Christian New Testament, not unlike the Babylonian Talmud, is toxic, poisoning the mind and crippling the soul of those who place their faith in it. The message being poured out is inebriating, as disagreeable and corrupt as those who promote it. This is one of the many places where the full implications of Ra matter. It isn't just that the concoction Sha'uwl, Paul is dishing out is toxic, but so are his miserable and malignant assemblage of co-conspirators and companions. The problem with religion, when perverted purveyors of poison like Paul falsely claim to speak for God, is that words the sane would normally challenge and reject become stupefying and paralyzing. Religion is a neurotoxin that renders its victims incapable of reason. Paul's rancorous rage has crippled much of the world. It is truly amazing that someone so obviously wrong, clearly psychotic, egotistical and hypocritical, could fool so many 656 for so long, with megachurches and soaring cathedrals serving as the tombstones of the resulting pandemic. As stated previously, God is opposed to abusing the vulnerable sexually and to that which is destructive to the family unit. So, he speaks out against incest, rape, pedophilia, and bestiality. He also addresses a rather disgusting tendency of warriors during those days, whereupon the defeated army was sodomized by the victors. This is the act mistaken as an admonition against homosexuality. I'm certain that Yahowah designed the human anatomy for men and women to enjoy being intimate, and to make the process of conceiving children pleasurable. Therefore, even though he does not condemn homosexuality between consenting adults, it is clearly in conflict with the original design and an associated covenant symbolism. I share this because there is no getting around the fact that this prophecy is condemning Sha'uwl, Paul, and that he is being depicted as a homosexual. So based on all we have learned, the reasons are fivefold. First, Paul admitted to being a sexual deviant in Romans 7, so by predicting this of him, the prophecy becomes more specific and credible. Second, Paul is manipulating the situation, taking advantage of the young men he is ravishing. By intoxicating them, he does not have their consent. And this makes Paul a rapist. We should not be so foolish that we accept the testimony of a sexual predator. Third, Sha'uwl condemned homosexuality as surely as he condemned the Torah. The realization that he was what he denounced makes him a hypocrite, and they are never to be trusted. Fourth, the fulcrum of Paul's argument against Yahowah's Torah and his berith was circumcision 657 because it was something his Greek and Roman audience naturally opposed. So, he referred to Yahowah's covenant as being of the flesh, which to fellow Gnostics meant that it was flawed and inferior. Therefore, by conveying Sha'ul's preoccupation with penises, God is not only equipping us to recognize Sha'uwl when we see him but, also, preparing us to combat his arguments against the sign of the covenant. And fifth, since the berith is the reason we were created and central to the message of the Torah, by corrupting the model Yahowah intended, Sha'uwl is leading the faithful away from God. Men and women were designed to become fathers and mothers to conceive and raise children within a loving and protected home in order to provide a tangible metaphor for life within the berith. Paul's replacement covenant is, thereby, being shown as something only the intoxicated, those lacking good judgment, would pursue. The realization that God called Sha'uwl, Paul a homosexual, a drunkard and drug dealer, a sexual pervert and predator, will likely make Christians apoplectic. And while 4 of these 5 behaviors are decidedly bad, it's Paul's duplicitous and manipulative hypocrisy, his lack of character and morals, and his inability to show empathy for others, that are the bigger issues. In this way, Paul reminds us of Muhammad, another self-admitted victim of demon possession, who said one thing and did another. Muhammad was a pedophile and rapist, a sexual pervert and bisexual. They are the 2 least qualified and most inappropriate individuals to be considered spokesmen for God. Their perverted and immoral messages were as twisted and corrupted as the men who issued them and claimed them to be divine. Anyone who deliberately intoxicates others, incapacitating them to have sex with them, is scum. And 658 While such despicable behavior is individually criminal, the problem with Sha'uwl, Paul is infinitely more egregious. He not only convinced billions to denounce and disregard the Torah, guidance of Yahowah, but he also turned Gentiles against Jews, fanning the flames of anti-Semitism. Calling Sha'uwl, Paul, the deadliest and most damning, deceitful and despicable man who ever lived is appropriate since God holds the same view. You will get your fill of, Saba, you will be met with an abundance of, perfect second person masculine singular, shame and infamy, insults befitting such a lowly individual, kalon, dishonor and disgrace, scorn and contempt, along with a humbling, degraded and discredited reputation, from kala, being discredited and disavowed, instead of, min, honor and glory, kabod, the manifestation of the power and presence of God which rewards and empowers. You choose to be inebriated in addition to intoxicating others, shathagamota, you have decided to consume and experience large quantities of alcohol yourself, and to become a drunkard while also inebriating others, imperative, of your own free will, actually desiring intoxication. What's more, you want them to be unacceptable, even to expose themselves, because of your disdain for circumcision, you choose to see them naked, assuring that they are uncircumcised and thus unacceptable and unredeemable. Nephil imperative, the subject of the verb both carries out and suffers from the action based upon his choices and desires, encompassing them from all angles with circular reasoning, sabab, going roundabout in circles, on and on, ad infinitum, with this alternative direction. Cal imperfect, literally with ongoing implications. 659 upon you is, alota, before you is, the binding cup, cows of Yahowah's, Yahowah, a transliteration of, our Eloah, God as directed in his Torah, teaching regarding his higher, existence, right hand, Yamin, serving as a metaphor for judgment and as a reference to Yemeni, being a Benjamite. Therefore, public humiliation and an ignominious reputation as a result of being dishonorable and disgraceful, kikalon, insults befitting a lowly and little individual of degraded status who is sleazy, disreputable, and contemptible, from kalon, being scorned and humbled with a discredited reputation, will be your reward, al-kabod otter, the manifestation of your reputation and attribution of your status, second person masculine singular suffix, thus addressing a solitary man. Chabaquwq, embrace this, Habakkuk 2:16. Paul sought notoriety, and earned infamy. He sought praise but has been denounced as appalling. He promoted salvation through grace and has been condemned. Anyone care to follow him? Pauline doctrine is an intoxicating poison, venom from the vilest of serpents. But more indictable still, Sha'uwl, who never knew the love of a woman, provocatively expressed his love for a young man, Timothy. And even though Paul detested circumcision and spoke hatefully about the sign of the covenant, he personally circumcised his love interest, Acts 16:1. However, God is saying that Sha'ul's poisonous and inebriating attack against the decision to be circumcised will come full circle and engulf him in shame. The man who claimed to be God's exclusive apostle to the Gentiles has become the man of infamy, Paulos, little and lowly. 660 When it comes to our standing with Yahowah, especially when working with him, what matters is what he says about us, not what someone says about themselves. And when claiming to speak for God and to be chosen to represent him, one's assessment had better match Yahowah's pronouncements or there will be hell to pay. Dowd is the ultimate contrast. There are copious prophetic references to his fulfillment of the Mikra, particularly Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, and, yet, while honoring those commitments, he said nothing and let his actions speak for themselves. Yahowah bestowed laudable titles and accolades upon Dowd, including Dowd, Ben, Mashah, Melech, Zarawah, Bakar, Basha, Ruwach Qodesh, Zmak, Zardak, and Nabi, while condemning Sha'uwl, Paul, calling him the plague of death, son of evil, and father of lies. So why is the self-proclaimed apostle the one who is bragging? Sha'uwl, Paul not only claimed, without any prophetic support, to be the lone authorized spokesperson for God throughout the world, but he also had the audacity to contradict Yahowah and discredit his son while doing so. It isn't just that he lied about everything, including himself, it is that his deceptions negated the benefits of Dowd's sacrifice for countless billions. If Sha'ul's, Paul's mission were even 1% as important as he claimed, there would have been a score or more prophecies announcing and applauding it, so that when it happened, Yisraelites would be receptive. However, there was nothing but overwhelming condemnation. And that is why Sha'uwl, Paul had to misappropriate, and misrepresent prophecies like this one to bolster his credentials. There are perhaps 100 prophecies announcing this mission. And yet, Yada Yahowah is nothing more than accurately conveying what the prophets have said about 661 Yahowah, Dowd, Yahwim, and Yisrael, the Torah, Mikra, and Berith, to encourage reconciliation prior to the fulfillment of Yom Kippurim in year 6000 year. And while I was more comfortable being anonymous, it would have been as inappropriate and disrespectful not to acknowledge what God foretold as it was for Sha'uwl, Paul to claim for himself what was never stated. There is also the issue of the Torah's test for authorization. And while it is for prophets, and thus condemns Sha'uwl, Paul, even as a basar, kaul, naka, malak, Chota, Eda, and Little Zarawa, the same expectations apply. To be considered valid, what we say must be consistent with what Yahowah has previously professed through his Nabi. What I have written is, what Sha'uwl, Paul wrote was not. It is the difference between life and death. In this regard, it is interesting to note that over the past 22 years, I have discovered and shared hundreds of profound insights derived from the prophets that were unheralded. And not only were these conclusions overwhelmingly accurate, but when I discovered a mistake, I not only admitted it, but devoted the time to correct any misrepresentation throughout every volume, as I am doing now with the recognition that Dowd was more than just the Messiah and Son of God, but also the one who has and will continue to fulfill the modim. When caught in a lie, Sha'uwl, Paul doubled down and lied as a retort. I dare say, in the whole of Yahowah's prolific testimony, no prophecy is as dire as this one. But that is because no one ever did what Sha'uwl, Paul has done. Such a rebuke was not required of anyone else. Since Yahowah has provided this caustic evaluation of Sha'uwl, Paul with this condemning assessment of his religion, the only way to view the leading author and inspiration behind the Christian New Testament favorably 662 would be to ignore God and estrange oneself from him. The debate is over. The choice is black and white. Paul is the man of infamy. Continuing to provide some encouragement in the midst of this overwhelming condemnation of Sha'uwl, and his demonic associate, Yahowah reaffirms his promise. Indeed, and by contrast, this is reassuring because, he has chosen to constantly keep you covered and continually protected. Kasa'ata, he will always provide a covering by which he adorns you, clothing and forgiving you. Peel imperfect jussive energic none, it is God's will to clothe and enthusiastically protect, from this grievous injustice and blatant wrongdoing in opposition to, Shema, this unrighteous and unrestrained campaign of error and of Torahlessness in destructive conflict with, that which purifies, Labanoun, that which cleanses and whitens, becoming morally pure and white as snow, typically transliterated Lebanon, but from Laban, purifying, cleansing, and whitening and own, being substantially empowered, growing vigorously, while becoming enormously enriched. And as for, the destructive and demonic influence of the devil who is seeking to be worshipped as God, Shod, Satan's devastating and ruinous, plundering and oppressive, he will shatter and separate, chatteth them, he will astound them, causing them to wane as they experience something truly dreadful, the beasts, Behemah, because of, Min, as a result of, the blood, death, of humankind, Adam, and also, this grievous injustice against and blatant wrongdoing in opposition to, Shema. This unrighteous and unrestrained campaign of terror in destructive conflict with, the land, Eres, realm, region, or earth, city, Kriya, to encounter, meet and be present with and all, Sha'uwl, of her inhabitants, Bar Yashab, who have settled there to be restored, to be established, and to live 663 cal participle. Chabaquwq, embrace this, Habakkuk 2:17. Some 4 to 5 decades ago when I was a Christian, I recall speculating on what Paul meant when he spoke of the thorn in my side. As a consequence of my faith, I was oblivious to the fact that Paul answered the question, announcing in the same paragraph that he was demon-possessed. And now, God, himself, has foretold that the most hideously destructive man in human history perpetrated his great crime against humanity in association with a demonic spirit seeking to be worshipped as God. While Sha'uwl and Satan have had their run, and their way with humankind, their dominion is about to implode. Babylon and the beast will soon be shattered, their power will wane, and they will be separated unto Sha'uwl. And when that happens, when the unrighteous campaign against the Torah is snuffed out, those who remain under God's constant protection will stand tall, not unlike the once towering cedars of Lebanon. Those beside Yahowah upon his return will have 4 things in common. 1. We will have come to know and love Yahowah. 2. We will have accepted the conditions of the covenant. 3. We will have answered Yahowah's invitations to be called out and meet. 4. And we will have arrived at this place and time because we devoted the energy to observing his Torah and prophets. And I suspect that these celebrants will all have come to appreciate what Dowd has done for us. Behemah, rendered as beasts, draws our attention to Gabriel's, God's most capable and courageous man's prophecy in Daniel. Therein, the beast evolved from Babylon to Persia to Greece, and then to Rome where it became the Roman Catholic Church. And that final transition has Sha'ul's fingerprints all over it. 664 Yahowah's next insight is breathtaking. God correctly assessed the essence of Paul's replacement theology. Sha'uwl did not only replace the Torah with but I say, Yisrael with Gawam, and Dowd with Iazau Christus, he replaced Yahowah with himself. The reason God is misrepresented and misquoted, and that Paul speaks for his God. And to succeed with this illusion, Sha'uwl had to create a mythological savior by modeling his Iazau Christo after Dionysus and then robbing Dowd for credibility. How does he succeed with a caricature? Mar Yal Pazel, what is the benefit of worshipping his false representation of God? In what way is his religious deity worthwhile? And how can one profit with a created image, hyphal perfect? Indeed, KY, he has fabricated his false God, Posol Hu, he has constructed the object of worship, devising, preparing, and promoting him, Yazar Hu, fashioning and forming him, creating and ordaining him, Kal perfect, by concealing the association with the representation of the pagan god, Maseka, by forming an alliance which covers over and veils the connotation with the false god, hiding and covering up the true identity of the idolatrous image, Kal perfect, and by becoming a source of lies, making it all untrue, a vain and deceitful sham, Yara Sheka, as well as by tossing out deceptive instructions and misleading directions with mistaken and useless guidance for no reason or benefit, teaching falsehoods, hyphal participle. Thereby, KY, he adds credence to and encourages reliance upon, Beituch, he makes credible and believable, even preferable that which causes believers to stumble and the unsuspecting to fall as a result of their penchant, and fondness for trusting and depending upon, the one who created the construct of himself, Yazar Yetzer al-Hu, the one who was motivated to devise, plan, prepare, and form such idolatrous thoughts and inclinations based upon 665 himself, and his desires by fashioning himself into someone to be venerated and worshipped, Kal participle. For he, himself, performs to make, al-Huasar, he personally acts and engages to fabricate and profit from, worthless gods who do not speak, Ilil Ilam, references to imagined and ineffectual religious deities to worship who are silent, speechless, mute, and dumb. Chabaquwq, embrace this, Habakkuk 2:18. There is another discrepancy here between the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Masoretic Text worth noting. Rather than saying fashioning him by offering a veiled form of a pagan god and by teaching lies, the Qumran scrolls read, by making a deceptive appearance, which is an invalid manifestation or representation. Either way, Paul's God, the Christian God, is not only a fake, he was conceived by Paul, and as inflammatory as that may sound, it's not my opinion but, instead, God's assessment. For anyone protesting that this could not be the case since the Gospels precede Paul's letters in the Bible, that is an argument conceived in ignorance. All 14 of Paul's letters were written and distributed before any of the Gospels were written. And even then, Paul admits to using Mark in this way. Luke was Paul's propagandist, and he also compiled Acts. Further, Matthew was plagiarized 2 generations thereafter by parroting the myths contained in Mark and Luke while misrepresenting himself as disciple. And that would leave only John, which contains very little biographical information. And while its authorship is also highly questionable, it was not composed until well after the temple was destroyed by the Romans in 70 CE. Then there was the heavy-handed editing and augmenting by the Roman Catholic Church, beginning around 300 CE, such that the text was crafted to suit their lust for power, wealth, and control. 666 Like it or not, since nothing written by the fabricated god and caricature Isau exists, Sha'uwl, Paul is the author and inspiration behind the Christian New Testament. He is to blame for the anti-Semitic cult that would haunt God's people and the world. Even in Peter, should he have been more real than John the Baptist, he was condemned and then conscripted to serve Paul's agenda. Considering all Yahowah has foretold to denounce and damn Sha'uwl in Chabaquwq, embrace this, Habakkuk 2:18, warning his people because God knew what Christianity would do to them, this may be the most jarring. It means that Iesou Christou, Jesus Christ is a false god, a deity conceived and promoted by Sha'uwl, Paul. The story of Jesus is a created caricature, fabricated and devised by a man promoting a deceitful sham, and it was all done for one reason, for Paul. Sha'uwl made up the entire story, including the encounter on the road to Damascus, going to Arabia to be trained, being appointed an apostle by God, speaking to and for Jesus, and being granted authority over everyone. It was all a lie, salvation by faith, the gospel of grace, the resurrection, the notion that Jews conspired to kill God, replacement theology, and a New Testament. All fabricated by the plague of death. That is a stunning indictment because it serves as God's affidavit against the principal author and inspiration behind the Christian religion. This is a statement of fact, a stark reality, so the only question is how people are going to process what Yahowah has just revealed. Recognizing the religious do not know or respect Yahowah or his prophetic testimony, most will ignore God's pronouncement. Then they will slander me as if by using an ad hominem response, 2 wrongs will make them right. So, shoot the messenger if you dare try, and retreat to your favorite con artist and his false god if that is 667 your preference, but know that you have been warned that Christianity was a deliberate hoax. Jesus never existed and he most certainly was not God. There was no Christ. God did not die. Paul was not an apostle. And the Christian New Testament is invalid, and, worse, satanic. There are a number of additional insights in this statement, all of which point to Sha'uwl. First, God is asking us to question what Sha'uwl is proposing, knowing that if we are informed and rational, we will reject the man whose name, Sha'uwl, means to question. Second, Sha'uwl created a paisel, caricature that was inconsistent with reality. Paul's Azab was not only a human posol, construct, he was contrived to maseka, conceal the association with a pagan god, in this case, the beloved god of the Greeks, Dionysus. Therefore, his Christu was Yazar, devised to maseka, misrepresent the true identity of the Pauline construct. He would even maseka, cover up the connection with his own ambitions and persona, hiding the fact that Azab Christo represents Sha'uwl, right down to his character and purpose. Third, each time the Pauline caricature is presented, we find the third-person masculine singular suffix. His false god is, therefore, devised in the image of a man, and there is only one of him in the condemning prophecy. Fourth, since Yara, the source of teaching, instruction, direction and guidance is the verb upon which the title, Torah, is based, we find Sha'uwl promoting his own variation of God's instruction, one which is sheker, deceptive, misleading, mistaken, and useless. It's the combo platter from hell, a false god with a false teacher. Fifth, the full implications of Beitach are especially Pauline. It reveals that Sha'ul's deceptive guidance regarding the caricature he devised Beitach, would cause the unsuspecting and naive to stumble and fall. They 668 would be beguiled into Beitach, believing that they could trust and rely upon the self-proclaimed apostle of the God who said he could not lie. Paul actually usurped the infused credibility he gave his false god to convince believers that he was credible. And this leads us to the combination of Yada Yahowah following Beitach, which is translated as the one who created the construct of himself. Further amplified, Yada Yahowah conveys the one who was motivated to devise, plan, prepare, and form idolatrous thoughts and inclinations based upon himself, and his desires by fashioning himself into someone to be venerated and worshipped. That is really bad. God's statement is saying that Sha'ul's false characterization was created to make Sha'uwl appear laudable, worthy of veneration and worship, not Yahowah. His phony construct was devised because Sha'uwl wanted readers to believe him, not doubt. And let's be clear, the way this is worded, Yahowah is accusing Sha'uwl, Paul, of creating a god in his image such that the false god and false messenger would be esteemed and deified. And what makes this especially revolting is that there is very little distinction between Sha'uwl and Satan. This then draws us back to Paul's admission, that Satan possessed him to control his ego. The adversary wanted to be the Christian god and have Sha'uwl serve as his apostle. However, Sha'uwl wanted to have their roles reversed. Turns out, the devil and his advocate didn't play nicely together because they both wanted full credit and top billing. This charade is played out in Ezekiel, with the false prophet modeling the adversary. It is the same situation that we find in the Quran, with Muhammad being indistinguishable from Allah. 669 Lastly, Ilam brilliantly depicts the outcome of this fight for supremacy. Sha'ul's gods, both father and son, were impotent, unable to save, their testimony ranging from irrelevant to irritating. There isn't a single word accurately conveyed from either of them. This is actually unique in that even the gods of mythology have speaking roles in their celestial dramas, but not Paul's. Therefore, one or both of two options is possible. Paul, knowing that his old and new, father and son, gods were contrived, pulled their strings and spoke for them in the fashion of a ventriloquist with a dummy. Either that, or there was no distinction between Paul and the Lord of Christianity. If this is all too much to process, then please consider reading the 4 volumes of Questioning Paul. Everything you have just read in support of Yahowah's condemning evaluation of Sha'uwl, Paul is systematically laid out and developed, including the history and sorry state of the text underlying the New Testament. Yahowah spoke to us that we might know that he does not appreciate it when con men like Paul lead people away from him. He wants us to know that he does not want to be worshipped. He never once asks us to pray to him, preferring that we listen instead. Paul not only wanted to be venerated, he told believers to pray without ceasing. If you like the idea of a dumb god, might you also want to venerate a dead god on a stick, too? After all, nothing impresses Yahowah more than people praying to and worshipping the gods they have made. Or not? Woe to the one who says, Howiyamah, this is a warning to anyone who states, while approaching something wooden, etz, approaching the timber, wooden planks, or tree, serving as a reference to the Christian cross, I want you to act alive and choose to do something, cause, I do not want you to be in 670 inanimate object, so choose to become alive again instead of dead, going from inactive to active, hyphal imperative paragogic, cohortative second person masculine, the speaker wants the wood to be animated, and anthropomorphic, choosing to act alive, doing so enthusiastically and demonstrably, and to a dumb, silent, and lifeless rock, la eben dumam, an inanimate stone idol or unresponsive stone building, wake up, be alert, and rise up, Yur, awake and gloat. Can either guide or teach, Hu Yara, can they instruct or educate? Look, Hine, notice, it, Hu, has been seized and overlaid, Taphas, has been grasped hold of and held as an object signifying victory, dealt with and manipulated such that it wields considerable influence when adorned and covered, Kal passive, having this actually done to it, with gold, Zahab, and silver, becoming extremely desirable, Wa Kezif, gilded in silver so as to be yearned for, but completely devoid of, Wa Shirline, the spirit, Ruwach, in its midst, Bar Kirebhu, associated with it so as to animate its existence. Chabaquwq, embrace this, Habakkuk 2:19. Sha'uwl, Paul repeatedly stated that there was the power of salvation in the cross, that it was the means to be cause, awakened from the dead. The wooden cross not only became the symbol of his religion, but it also became an object of worship. And this is over God's objection. I dare say that there is nothing more offensive to Yahowah than to see billions of people bowing to the image of a tortured and dead God nailed to a stick. Paul would even equate sleep with death and spoke of those who were sleeping being aroused abruptly and then rising to meet Azab. This statement is, therefore, an allusion to Paul's fixation on the wooden cross from which he promotes bodily resurrection from the dead. 671 The single most important citation in the Christian New Testament, indeed, the one upon which the entire myth was built, appears but once, and even then it was contrived and falsely attributed to their Iesou Christos by Eusebius and the Roman Catholic Church 2 centuries thereafter. It is the claim that, in conjunction with equating Peter to Satan, the keys to heaven were given to the rock because he believed that Iesou was the Christos and Son of God. And so now we find Yahowah mocking this absurd notion. We have come a long way in a short time. Yahowah has had a lot to say about Paul and Christianity, all bad, so let's review it before we move on. Why not immediately, right now, even if only for a short period of time, Harlow Peter, rise up and take a stand, accomplishing something worthwhile, because, he is loading himself down, tarn, with, dark, wicked, and obscuring, a feeler, mud, dirt to be swept away, tyt. Your oppressors, those controlling you financially and who are collecting money from you, Nashak Otter, will be alerted, Yakats, such that they are concerned and will react to you, Zua Otter. Otherwise, you will be, higher, persecuted and robbed by them, La Mashaza Lahem. Chabaquwq 2-7. Then, you, Otter, will be plundered, impoverished, and preyed upon, Shalal, by an enormous number, Rab, of Gentiles, Gawim. They will seize, harass, and disparage you, Shalal Otter, confiscating most of the wealth, taking everything of value, from the remaining Yether, people, as a result of, Min, the bloodlust, Dam, of humankind, Adam, with, the violent and cruel destructive forces terrorizing, Shema, the land, Erez, Years city 672 Kriya, and all, Sha'uwl, who dwell in her, Yashab Bar-Hai. Chabaquwq 2-8. This is a warning, Howie, to one who covets ill-gotten gain and would do anything to take advantage, promoting that which is dishonest while performing, Batsa, evil, advancing that which is undesirable and counterproductive in cahoots with his unprincipled colleagues, Ra, on behalf of his clan and his covenant, La Baith to position, La Sim, his construct, Kanhu, in the heights of heaven, Bar-Ha-Ma'am, snatching it away from, La Natsal Min, the reach, Kaf, of the unfortunate adversarial brethren. Ra. Chabaquwq 2-9. You have deliberately decided upon and conspired at the advice of another to devise and promote an ignominious plot to confuse by substituting, seeking to replace, Yats Bosheth, those who approach your house, La Baith Otter, by scraping away, cutting off, and destroying, devastating by ending the existence of, Katsa, the preponderance of the family of related individuals along with many other people, Amrab. And so, you have forfeited, bearing the loss by misleading, thereby impugning and surrendering, Chatter, your soul, Nepesh Otter. Chabaquwq 2-10. Indeed, the building stone, cornerstone, and stone tablet, Eben, from, Min, the wall supporting the house, will cry out, issuing a proclamation, Zark, and, the infrastructure of connecting rafters and beams, Kafis, of, Min, timber, will answer and respond to this, Anahai. Chabaquwq 2-11. Woe to, Howie, the one who establishes, Banar, a population of provoked individuals and a shrine to agitation and incitement, in blood, Bardam. 673 He fashions and forms, Wakun, a populated institution for meeting and preaching, Kriya, based upon that which is perverted and incorrect, invalid and unjust, Bar Allah. Chabaquwq 2-12. Why not pay attention, Halohine, to that which is from, Mineth, Yahowah, Yahowah, of the spiritual implements, Tsapah. But instead, Wah, the people, expend their energy and grow weary, Yugga, amidst a profuse conglomeration, Day, of worthless trifling, Esh. Those united under an antiquated system, Walaam, exhaust and destroy themselves, Yaf, into excessive emptiness and extravagant delusions, Day. Chabaquwq 2:13. Indeed, she will edify and completely satisfy, male, the land, Eres, with the knowledge, La Yada, of Yahowah, significance, glorious presence, and abundant value, Kabod, similar to the way water, Hominem, is a cover, Kasa, upon the sea, Al-Yam. Chabaquwq 2:14. Woe to, Howie, the one who pours out evil, causing his miserable companions and disagreeable fellow citizens to drink that which is toxic, Shakarahu, gathering and joining them together in a religious and political association, Tsapah, of your debilitating antagonism, paralyzing perversions, and crippling venom, Kema. And much more than this, Wa'af, providing intoxicants to the point of incapacitation, Shakar, for the express purpose of, Laman, gazing upon while demonstrating a preference for, Nabatal, their genitals, Ma'ohem. Chabaquwq 2:15. 674 You will get your fill of, Saba, shame and infamy, insults befitting such a lowly individual, Kalon, instead of, Min, honor and glory, Kabod. You choose to be inebriated in addition to intoxicating others, Shathagamota. What's more, why, you want them to be unacceptable, even to expose themselves, because of your disdain for circumcision, encompassing them from all angles with circular reasoning, Sabab. Upon you is, Alota, the binding cup, cows of Yahowah, right hand, Yamin. Therefore, public humiliation and an ignominious reputation as a result of being dishonorable and disgraceful, Kikalon, will be your reward, Al-Kabod. Chabaquwq 2:16. Indeed, and by contrast, this is reassuring because, he has chosen to constantly keep you covered and continually protected, Kasaota, from this grievous injustice and blatant wrongdoing in opposition to, Shema, that which purifies, Lebanon. And as for, the destructive and demonic influence of the devil, who is seeking to be worshipped as God, Shod, he will shatter and separate, Chatathem, the beasts, Behema, because of, Min, the blood, Dam, of humankind, Adam, and also, this grievous injustice against and blatant wrongdoing in opposition to, Shema, the land, Eres, smile, Yes city, Kriya, and all, Sha'uwl, of her inhabitants, Bar Yasab. Chabaquwq 2:17. How does he succeed with a caricature and what is the benefit of worshipping a false god, Maryal Pazel? Indeed, he has fabricated his false god, Posol devising, preparing, and promoting him, Yazahu, by concealing the association with the representation of the pagan god, Maseka, and by becoming a source of 675 lies, making it all untrue, a vain and deceitful sham, Yara Sheka. Thereby, he adds credence to and encourages reliance upon, Betuch, the one who created the construct of himself, Yazar Yetzer al-Hu. For he, himself, performs to make, al-Huasar, worthless gods who do not speak, Ilil Ilam. Chabaquwq 2:18. Woe to the one who says, Howie Amar, while approaching something wooden, Laha Etz, I want you to act alive and choose to do something, cause unto a dumb, silent, and lifeless rock, La Eben Dumam, wake up, be alert, and rise up, awake and gloat. Can either guide or teach, Yara. Look, Hu, has been seized and overlaid, Tafas, with gold, Zahab, and silver, becoming extremely valuable and desirable, Kezif, but completely devoid of, Sha'uwl, the spirit, Ruwach, in its midst, Bar Hu. Chabaquwq, embrace this, Habakkuk 2:19. If I may add my 2 shekels at this juncture. I am grateful to Yahowah for his commitment to keeping us out of harm's way by keeping us properly informed. With this prophecy, there was never any excuse for Christianity. God negated the credibility of the faith, its creator, his spirit, their rhetoric, and their cross 666 years before the religion was thrust upon the world. As a rebuke to prayer generally, and to Paul's moronic notion to do so without ceasing, specifically, we find God requesting. All the while, Yahowah, a transliteration of Yahowah as instructed in his Torah, 676 teaching regarding his higher existence, is in his set-apart, Bar Kodesh residence, Hakel, palatial home, from Yakol, enabling and prevailing, overcoming and enduring, powerful and everlasting. Be silent and stop speaking, has, hush, hold your tongue, and be quiet, before his appearance, min panahu, before his physical manifestation, throughout the earth, Sha'uwl ha-eres, everywhere within the land. Chabaquwq, embrace this, Habakkuk 2:20. Humankind has done more talking than listening, more contriving than observing. It is the bane of Judaism. So Yahweh is recommending that we defy Paul and his fellow rabbis by being quiet and hearing what God has to say. His return with his Son is near, and we have a lot to learn in a short period of time. What follows is a wonderful affirmation of what Yahweh has done for us, of his reliability, and of his willingness to personally and mercifully engage so that we might live. But to understand any of this, we have to stop talking and start listening. This is a desire to be set apart, separated, tafila. This is an earnest petition to be uncommon and thus neither religious nor political, from pala, to be separate and distinct, from erring and going astray, as well as from the ensuing madness, al-shigayan, concerning the consequence of ignorance and intoxication, of the foolish being led away into madness and insanity, from shaga, to go astray, to err, to mislead and to inebriate by way of ignorance, leading to insanity, and own that which pertains to the preceding, through, la, concerning, Chabaquwq, embrace this, Chabaquwq, grasp hold of this, the prophet, ha-nabi, the one who speaks for God regarding the past, present, or future. Chabaquwq 3:1. Yahowah, an accurate presentation of the name of Eloah, God as guided by his Torah, 677 instructions regarding his higher existence. I have listened to the entirety of Shama. I have literally heard during this period of time, Kal perfect, your announced message, Shema Otter, the testimony you have reported to be recited and thus heard. I respect and revere, I am in awe and inspired by your work, Poal Otter, what you have done and the energy you have expended to accomplish so much. Yahowah, a transliteration of, our Eloah, God as directed in his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence, throughout the years, Bar Kireb Shanaim, choosing to renew and restore life, Cheahu, with the desire to nurture and preserve life, causing life to flourish and grow, Peel imperative, in the midst of those years, Bar Kireb Shanaim. Love, mercy, and compassion, rachab, affection, the desire for an endearing relationship, and genuine concern and devotion, Kal imperfect, you make known, Yada, you reveal and acknowledge, Hyphal imperfect, so that it is remembered, Zakar, it is recalled, recognized, and invoked, Kal imperfect, in turmoil, Bar Ogez, in time of hardship and trouble, of anxiety and agitation, Kal imperfect. Chabaquwq, embrace this, Habakkuk 3:2. What Chabaquwq had witnessed was not only the worst thing he had ever seen, it was the low point in human history. He was exasperated and wanted Yahweh to intervene. Who could blame him? He had listened to all Yahweh had to say and then to Paul, and he was flabbergasted that so many were choosing to die at the hands of this charlatan. His choice was to live, to have his life restored, and it is what he wanted for us as well. This was, after all, Yahweh's will for our lives. God has grown weary of reprimanding and chastising his people for being so absurdly religious. He wanted to love them and be merciful toward them, but they were 678 thwarting his intent. So, all that was left was to hope that, in the midst of the time of Jacob's troubles, life would get sufficiently challenging such that a remnant of his people would turn to him, remembering the God of their fathers. A clear and comprehensive, consistent and cohesive, explanation of what Yahweh is offering and expecting in return has been available to us for the better part of 3,500 years. Man's reluctance to capitalize upon his mercy by observing his guidance is inexcusable and befuddling. God, Eloah, will arrive, woe, will return, entering the scene, Kal imperfect, Mintayaman, from the south, with the right hand, and for the right, Mintayaman, from a southern direction, at the right side, and for those who choose right, from the direction of Korib and the Torah, from Yaman, right, and, Wah, the set-apart one, Qodesh from Mount, Minha, Paran, to adorn and illuminate, Paran, where one is glorified, the root of the Exodus, from Par, to beautify and adorn, denoting the root of the Exodus and the mountain upon which the Torah was revealed. Pause a moment to weigh the uplifting implications, Selah. He adorns, Kasa, he covers and clothes, the spiritual realm, Shamaim, the heavens, in his splendor and majesty, Howd-Hu, with his empowering presence and glorious countenance, his vitality, efficacy, and authority, and, Wah, with his loving and marvelous deeds, Tehillah-Hu, with his shining brilliance and commendable nature, his adoration and manifestation of awe-inspiring power, she fills and satisfies, male, she abundantly furnishes and completes, Kal perfect, the land, Ha-Eres, the earth and material realm. Chabaquwq, embrace this, Habakkuk 3:3. 679 We find Selah, an accentuating pause and uplifting opportunity to weigh the significance of something throughout Daud's Mizmor, Psalms. Rather than read past something of significance and thereby failing to discern a pertinent insight, the returning King, Messiah, Savior, and Son of God encourages us to think about what he has written so that we might appreciate the implications of his fulfillment of the Mikra. So here we find Chabaquwq modeling that same approach and, perhaps, even identifying the same person, Daud as the right hand of God. As we ponder why Yahowah is arriving min Tiaman, from the south, with the right hand, and for those who are right, and then contemplate what Tiaman has to do with Paran, a map and some history are helpful. Since we know that Yahowah is returning to Yerushalayim, if he arrives there min Tiaman, from the south, he will be coming from Mount Korib where the Torah was given to the children of Yisrael. Korib is due south of Jerusalem. As for Har Paran, it serves as a poetic and descriptive name for Korib. Rather than the attributes of Korib, which are cutting and desolate, we have Paran, to adorn and illuminate, to beautify and glorify. Moreover, it is likely that all 18 encampments during the Yatzah, Exodus were in Paran. This is, therefore, Chabaquwq's way of saying that Sha'uwl was wrong. The Torah was not replaced. Instead, Yahowah is returning with it and is completing the Yatzah, Exodus. He is coming with his right hand, his son, Daud, to adorn and enlighten those who are right with his Torah, guidance. Yahowah is returning to his people from the place he last walked with them, to the place he gave them his guidance and teaching. It is where those who seek him go to find him today, and it is a very long way from 680 Damascus, so far, in fact, that the road to Damascus leads in the wrong direction and, thus, away from God. The land the set-apart spirit of Yahowah abundantly furnishes and fulfills, completes and satisfies, is Yisrael. It is not Greece or Rome, neither Europe nor America. Yahowah's Torah, like the set-apart spirit, is feminine, necessitating the pronoun she. It is in this way that Yahowah's spirit supplies God's love, reveals his glory, adorns us in a garment of light, fills our needs, and completely satisfies. It is through the Torah that we walk away from men like Paul so that we can meet with God. The set-apart spirit in conjunction with the Torah serves to enlighten us. And also, Wah, the knowledge and enlightenment, Nagar, the brilliance and radiance, the beautiful appearance, the gleaming and shining splendor, consistent with, Ka, the light, Ha-or, will exist as, Higher, she was, is, and always will be, Kel imperfect, dazzling and vivid shining rays of illumination, Kiran, the radiant brilliance and the strength symbolized by the ram's horn, from the source on the summit of the mount, from his hand and influence, Min Yod Hu, to approach him, La Hu, although there, at that place Washem, his power and force, Os Hu, his energy and might, were concealed and veiled, Kepyaun, were enveloped and covered. Chabaquwq, embrace this, Habakkuk 3:4. It's good that we pause to reflect upon Tiaman and Paran, because now we understand the reference to the full extent of God's power being concealed on Korib and while in Paran. By contrast, however, when he returns, he will not be veiling his power because all who remain will be adorned in the set-apart Spirit's garment of light. 681 God's children will be prepared to live in their Father's presence. It is all ours for the asking, knowledge and enlightenment, the brilliance of Yahowah's light, his power and authority, being reinforced and strengthened, enveloped in love, cherished and adored, all while being kept out of harm's way. It is a lot to give up just to believe Paul or the rabbis who trained him. This has been an amazing and enlightening voyage through Yahowah's prophetic witness. God answered every important question we should have been asking about Sha'uwl. His perspective on Paul matters, and his verdict is conclusive, irrefutable, and damning. This summation of Yahowah's public rebuke of Sha'uwl, Paul is among the most important prophecies ever recorded. Recognizing that it was in Hawshah that we were directed to Chabaquwq to consider what is said of Sha'uwl, let's review once again what Yahowah wanted his people to know. Away from the control, power, and influence, Min Yod, of Sha'uwl, I have chosen to ransom and redeem them, reacquiring them, Hem. So, plague of death, Morth, where, is the widespread pandemic you caused with your empty words and the sting of your controlling goads, to bear otter. Plague of death, Morth, where, is your fatal contagion, your ruinous influence, Kiteb otter. With Sha'uwl, the capacity for compassion and contrition, the ability to relent and show remorse, even regret, Nochem, is non-existent, Satar, from my perspective, Minanine. Hawshah 13:14. It is true, KY, this son of his brothers, Hu ben Hu, will run swiftly, thrive with bull, produce asses, 682 and be licentious, para. Then the foretold confrontational encounter, Kadim, with the spirit, Ruwach, of Yahowah, will come, bo. As a result of, questioning the word, midbar, his perversions will be esteemed, but he will lack integrity, Allah, Ola, and will be denounced when it is shown that what he did was wrong, Wa Bosh. His destructive source, Mak or Hue, will eventually be constrained, Wa Charab. His perceptions, Ma and Hue, will be exposed and stripped away, Hugh Shasa, including his treasury, Ozar Hugh, of everything, Shirl Kali, perceived as worthwhile and desirable, Keemdar. Hausha, Hosea 13:15. This brought us to. This is the prophetic pronouncement and published prophecy, Ha-Masa, which, for the benefit of the relationship, Asher, was witnessed and received as a revelation, Chaza, by Chabaquwq. Embrace this, Chabaquwq, the prophet, Ha-Nabi. Chabaquwq 1-1. For how long and to what extent, Adon, Yahowah, Yahowah, should I plead for someone to respond in a beneficial way to this desperate and dangerous situation, Sha'uwl, because, Wah, you are not listening, Lo Shama, to my anguished appeal and emotional outcry, Zark. Against you, El Otter, there is a devastating plot comprised of cruel lies, ruthlessly plundering the people without moral restraint using injurious language, Shema. As a result, Wah, you must withhold salvation, Lo Yasha. Chabaquwq 1-2. For what reason, Lama, are you having me witness, Ra-Eni, this grotesque corruption and deliberate fraud, this vain and morally objectionable behavior comprised of false testimony that is being 683 intentionally perpetrated, Arwen, which you consider, Nabat, vexing and troublesome, Amal. A demonic spirit seeking to be worshipped as God who is exceedingly malicious, destructive, oppressive, and confiscatory, Washad, Shed, Wa, a devastating and misleading plot advanced through injurious statements and wanton plundering, Shema, is conspicuously before me, publicly conveying this contrarian message, La Nejd, Nagadeni. He is and will continue to be, Wahaya, argumentative and contentious, quarrelsome and insulting, conveying a conflicting perception regarding the proper standard, Ribe. He brings forth and continuously advocates, Nasa, dissension, discord, and divisiveness, Wa Madown. Chabaquwq 1-3. Therefore, in this manner, Al-Ken, the Torah, teaching and guidance, Torah, is incapacitated. Its instructions are invalidated and ineffective, being nullified and paralyzed. Pog. As a result, Wa, the truthful and everlasting, eminent and permanent, La Netzer, means to vindicate by justly resolving disputes, Mishpat, will not be brought forth, publicly or openly disseminated, nor broadly extended, while Lo Yatza. Instead, religious corruption will become invasive and injustice will encompass, Rasha Kathra, the means to be right and become innocent, Ethhazadik. For this reason, that which, Al-Ken, he brings forth and disseminates, Yatsa, perverts, distorts, corrupts, and convolutes, twisting and misrepresenting, Akal, the way to make informed and rational decisions regarding vindication, Mishpat. Chabaquwq 1-4. You can consistently witness this, Ra, among the Gentiles, Baha Gawim, should you choose to be observant, Wa Nabat. And you can avoid being 684 adversely influenced and dumbfounded by remaining free of societal influences and by responding negatively to such idiocy, Wa Tama, contemplating how something so stunningly stupid is considered plausible, Tama. Indeed, it is true that, a considerable undertaking will transpire, a plot will be devised and implemented which results in controlling a vast accumulation of people and acquiring enormous wealth, Poal Pol. You should determine this to be inaccurate and invalid, lower man, in your days, bar Yaumimatum, especially when it is properly assessed and a written record is presented in books, whereby he is held accountable, Tsapah. Chabaquwq 1-5. For this reason, pay attention to me, Kyneani, arise and take a firm stand, against, the Chaldeans, aka, the influence of Babylon, Harkazdim. This Gentile nation, Gaui, is as impetuous and impulsive as it is pungent and poisonous, Maha. Walking, Holok, through the breadth of the region, La Merchab Eres, there is the seizure and dispossessing, La Yarash, of the tabernacle and dwelling places that are not his, Mishkan Lo Lahu. Chabaquwq 1-6. Invoking fear through intimidation and terrorism, he is out for himself, Humin Hu. He has broadly disseminated, spreading far and wide, Yatsa, Mishpat Hu, his judgment and thinking, his approach and assessments, Mishpat Hu, along with his self-adulation, particularly his position on the removal of guilt, forgiveness, and acceptance in the relationship, Wasath Hu. Chabaquwq 1-7. The dregs from the scummy remainder of the leopard, Min Nama, will be despised and held in 685 contempt, humbled and diminished at this time, Kalal. His swift airborne weaponry, Su's Hu, will be as fierce and menacing as a wolf, Chadad Min Zaid, when the sun sets, Arab. They're randomly dispersed and widely scattered. Push, mobile war machines and his accompanying soldiers, Parosh will come from afar in the future, min rachab, flying through the air, even hovering Yuf, like, Ka, birds of prey, Nesha, quickly swooping down and ready, Sha'uwl, to consume and destroy, La'akal. Chabaquwq 1-8. He will come, though, and be totally wrong as well as completely without restraint, harsh in demeanor, malicious in rhetoric, and especially cruel, Sha'uwl la Shama. Simultaneously, everyone's attention will be directed eastward as their appearance will be from the sunrise, Magama Panahem Kadim. And he will gather, Asaph, captives, Shabi, like the sand, Kaha Cha'uwl. Chabaquwq 1-9. And he, along with the rulers, Wahu Baha Melech, will mock and ridicule those they disdain, making fun of those they enjoy disparaging, Kalas. Those who govern and are empowered, Rosen, are haughty and egocentric, Misjak, because of him, Lahu. He, at everything, Hula Sha'uwl, which defends and fortifies, and should have remained off limits, Mibzar, laughs in amusement and is entertained, Zakak. He piles up a massive amount, Wazabar, of dust and debris from which there is a proliferation of materialistic progeny, Afa, and he seizes and controls them, Walakid High. Chabaquwq 1-10. Then at that time, as, he will hasten to change, actually going with a completely different, Chalaf, spirit, Ruwach. And he will arrogantly travel throughout, intoxicating and alienating, Wa'obar. He 686 will be wrong, incur guilt, and will suffer the punishment he deserves, Wa'asham, for, Zu, his claim to have been authorized by his God, along with his vigorous support of and his justification for his deity, Koch La Eloahu. Chabaquwq 1-11. Yahowah, my God, Elohimeni, my set-apart one, Kodesheni, are you not eternal, and thus everlasting and unlimited throughout time, Ha lo otam min kidem. We will not die, lo mouth. Yahowah, as a way to make an informed and rational decision regarding guilt or innocence, La Mishpat, you have appointed regarding this, Simhu, a crag, watcher, to accuse, rebuke, and chastise, Yakak, with you, after having laid the foundation, assigned this to him and then you instructed him, Yasathu. Chabaquwq 1-12. Too flawless, uncluttered, and pure, Tahawa, our eyes to witness, Ein Min Ra, the miserable, malignant, and malevolent wickedness of religion, Ra. You cannot endure or prevail when, lo Yakol, looking upon or responding to, Wanabat, such a perverse and grievous undertaking, Elamal. For what reason would, Lama, you look at or consider, Nabat, the treacherous betrayal of an offensive and deceitful trickster and traitor, Bagad. Therefore, you will enable and implement to write against the plot, while remaining otherwise silent and unresponsive, taking no other action for a prolonged period, Sharash, in opposition to the contradictory and thoroughly confusing religion, the incomprehensible and deceptive wickedness, this confounding and befuddling communication which will have been spread, embraced, accepted, and swallowed, Barbala Rasha, who is far more accurate and righteous than 687 him, who is correct instead of him, Zadik Minhu. Chabaquwq 1-13. Therefore, you engage with, Wasar, humankind, Adam, in a manner which could be compared to, Ka, the fish, Dag of the sea, Ka Yam, similar to, Ka, creatures which move freely about, Remus, without rules to govern them or anyone seeking to control them, Lo Marshal Bahu. Chabaquwq 1-14. In everything associated with him, Sha'uwl Bar, he dangles a lure and hook to entice the unsuspecting, Chaka Allah. When, he catches them, he drags them away, Gahu, in his dedicated trap, Baharim Hu. And he gathers them together and removes them, Asafhem, in his dragnets by kindling his victim's yearnings, while himself, mentally and emotionally dysregulated, Bar Mikmarith Hu. Therefore, concerning this, Alken, he acts as if he is elated, intoxicated as he is with himself, Samak, glad and gay, shrieking and shouting over this outcome, Wajil. Chabaquwq 1-15. So, therefore, in this way, Alken, he slaughters and sacrifices, Zabak, his devotees as they approach his net and are ensnared in his trap, mutilating and disfiguring them in his ruse on behalf of his deity, Laharim Hu. He blows smoke to make illicit worship seem pleasant, using perfume to cover the stench, Qatar, ensnaring his victims while remaining emotionally agitated and unstable, La Mikmarith Hu. For indeed, KY, by them, Bahem, he is enriched and productive, Shaman, through seductive words while he claims his share of the funds confiscated and apportioned in his persuasive plot, Chelik Hu. And so, what he devours, Markle Hu, is contrived, newly fashioned, and artificial, Barrier. Chabaquwq 1-16. 688. So why is it then, Hal Ken, that he continues to be delusional and vain, brandishing fantasies, and then disgorging, those devoted to him disfigured from his trap, harim Hu, only to, Wah, eternally and intentionally end the lives, Tamid la Harag, of Gentiles, Gawim, showing no concern or mercy, Lo Chamal. Chabaquwq 1:17. Upon, Al, my requirements and responsibilities, Mishmarith Eni, I have decided of my own initiative that I will literally and continually stand, Amod. And, Wah, I will choose to always remain firm and present, continually being ready and able to serve, Yazab, upon, Al, that which strengthens, protects, and fortifies, Matsor. Therefore, Wah, I will be on the lookout, Spur, in order to see, La Ra, what he will say about me, Ma Dabar Bar Eni. So then, Wah, how can I be expected to change my attitude, thinking, or response, Ma Shub, concerning, Al, my disapproving rebuke and desire to correct the record, Tokeketh Eni. Chabaquwq 2:1. Then, Wah, Yahowah, answered me, Anna Eni. He said, Wah Ma, of your own volition, write down, Katab, this revelation, Kazon. Then, Wah, you can choose to expound upon it using those letters, Vah, upon, Al, writing tablets, Ha Luvak, so that, Laman, by summoning, welcoming, and reading this, Kara by Hu, he will run, quickly departing and chased away, Ruse. Chabaquwq 2:2. Still indeed, the subsequent realization, Kyod, of this revelation from God, Kazon, is for Harmod, the eternal witness to the appointed meetings, La Harmod. It provides a witness to and speaks, pouring out evidence to censure and malign, Povak, at the very end, La Harkes. 689. Even though it may seem slow to develop, the extended period of time required for this question to be resolved, Maha, will not invalidate it, Lo Azab. Expect him in this regard, Chaka La Hu, because indeed, he will absolutely come and pursue this, Bobo. He will not be delayed nor will he remain, Loa Cha. Chabaquwq 2-3. Pay attention, he will be audacious, presumptuous, and oblivious, puffed up with false pride, a foolhardy pain in the ass riddled with venereal disease and hemorrhoidal abscesses for being reckless, affle. His soul, his way of looking at the world and responding to it, Nipesh Hu, is not right or straightforward, as it is inappropriate and counterproductive, Lo Yashar, in him, Wah Hu. And therefore, Wah, those who are correct and vindicated, Zadik, through trusting and relying upon him, Ba Emuna Hu, will live, share. Chabaquwq 2-4. However, on the other hand, this is frustrating, Waf, because, the intoxicating and inebriating spirit, Yain, of the mortal man, Geber, of deceptive infidelity and treacherous betrayal, Bagad, is an overbearing moral failure of unwarranted self-importance, Yah. Therefore, Wah, he will not achieve a desirable result, come home, or find peace, Lo Nawa, whoever is open to the broad and popular path, Asher Rachab, associated with, Sha'uwl, questioning the hysterical and boisterous uproar which is catastrophically devastating, Sha'uwl. He and his soul, Nipesh Hu Wah Hu, are like, the plague of death, Harmoith. And so, Wah, those who 690 are drawn in by him, accepting him, Asaph El Hu, will never be satisfied, Lo Saba. Every ethnicity of the Gentiles from every race and place, Sha'uwl Ha-Gawim, he will claim as his own and for himself, Kabat El Hu, with followers from every nation, Sha'uwl Ha-Am. Chabaquwq 2-5. Why don't any of them ask these questions about him, Ha Lo Alay Sha'uwl Hem El Hu? Terse references to the word they lift up as taunts to ridicule, Marshal Nasser, along with, Wah, elusive sayings and undecipherable interpretations which misappropriate the intended meaning, malice. There are hard and perplexing questions which need to be asked of him, Kida La Hu. And, Wah, they should say, Amar, Woe, Howie, to the one who claims to be great so as to increase his offspring, acting like a rabbi, Rabbah, neither of which apply to him, Lo La Hu. In the meantime, for how long, Admathe, will they make pledges, Abtite, based upon his significance, Kabed Al Hu. Chabaquwq 2-6. Why not immediately, right now, even if only for a short period of time, Harlo Peter, rise up and take a stand, accomplishing something worthwhile, Kun, because, Wah, he is loading himself down, Tarn, with, dark, wicked, and obscuring, Afila, mud, dirt to be swept away, Tyt. Your oppressors, those controlling you financially and who are collecting money from you, Nashak Otter, will be alerted, Yakats, such that they are concerned and will react to you, Zua Otter. Otherwise, Wah, you will be, higher, persecuted and robbed by them, La Mashaza Lahem. Chabaquwq 2-7. Then, you, otter, will be plundered, impoverished, and preyed upon, Sha'uwl, by an 691 enormous number, of Gentiles, Goim. They will seize, harass, and disparage you, Sha'uwl otter, confiscating most of the wealth, taking everything of value, from the remaining people, as a result of, the bloodlust, of humankind, Adam, with, the violent and cruel destructive forces terrorizing, Shema, the land, Eres, Yas city, Kriya, and all, Sha'uwl, who dwell in her, Yashab Bahai. Chabaquwq 2-8. This is a warning, to one who covets ill-gotten gain and would do anything to take advantage, promoting that which is dishonest while performing, batsa, evil, advancing that which is undesirable and counterproductive in cahoots with his unprincipled colleagues, on behalf of his clan and his covenant, la Baithu, to position, la Sim, his construct, Conhu, in the heights of heaven, Bahamam, snatching it away from, la Natsalmin, the reach, Kaf, of the unfortunate adversarial brethren. Chabaquwq 2-9. You have deliberately decided upon and conspired at the advice of another to devise and promote an ignominious plot to confuse by substituting, seeking to replace, Bosheth, those who approach your house, la Baith otter, by scraping away, cutting off, and destroying, devastating by ending the existence of, Katsa, the preponderance of the family of related individuals along with many other people, Amrab. And so, you have forfeited, bearing the loss by misleading, thereby impugning and surrendering, Chatter, your soul, Nepesh otter. Chabaquwq 2-10. Indeed, the building stone, cornerstone, and stone tablet, Eben, from, the wall supporting the house, will cry out, issuing a proclamation, Zark, and, the infrastructure of connecting rafters and 692 beams, Kafes, of, timber, will answer and respond to this, Anahai. Chabaquwq 2-11. Woe to, the one who establishes, Banar, a population of provoked individuals and a shrine to agitation and incitement, in blood, Bardam. He fashions and forms, Wakun, a populated institution for meeting and preaching, Kriya, based upon that which is perverted and incorrect, invalid and unjust, Bar-Ola. Chabaquwq 2-12. Why not pay attention, Harlohine, to that which is from, Mineth, Yahowah, of the spiritual implements, Zaba. But instead, the people, expend their energy and grow weary, Yugga, amidst a profuse conglomeration, Day, of worthless trifling, Esh. Those united under an antiquated system, Waleam, exhaust and destroy themselves, Yaf, into excessive emptiness and extravagant delusions, Day. Chabaquwq 2-13. Indeed, she will edify and completely satisfy, the land, Eres with the knowledge, La Yada, of Yahowah, significance, glorious presence, and abundant value, Kabod, similar to way water, Kahamaim, is a cover, Kasa, upon the sea, Al-Yam. Chabaquwq 2-14. Woe to, the one who pours out evil, causing his miserable companions and disagreeable fellow citizens to drink that which is toxic, Shakarahu, gathering and joining them together in a religious and political association, Tsapah, of your debilitating antagonism, paralyzing perversions, and crippling venom, Kema otter. And much more than this, Wa'af, providing intoxicants to the point of incapacitation, Shakar, for 693 the express purpose of, Laman, gazing upon while demonstrating a preference for, Nabatal, their genitals, Maohem. Chabaquwq 2-15. You will get your fill of, Saba, shame and infamy, insults befitting such a lowly individual, Kalon, instead of, honor and glory, Kabod. You choose to be inebriated in addition to intoxicating others, Shathagamota. What's more, you want them to be unacceptable, even to expose themselves, because of your disdain for circumcision, encompassing them from all angles with circular reasoning, Sabab. Upon you is, Al-Otter, the binding cup, cows of Yahowah, right hand, Yamin. Therefore, public humiliation and an ignominious reputation as a result of being dishonorable and disgraceful, Kikalon, will be your reward, Al-Kabod otter. Chabaquwq 2-16. Indeed, and by contrast, this is reassuring because, he has chosen to constantly keep you covered and continually protected, Kasa otter, from this grievous injustice and blatant wrongdoing in opposition to, Shema, that which purifies, Labanan. And as for, the destructive and demonic influence of the devil seeking to be worshipped as God, Shod, he will shatter and separate, Chattathem, the beasts, Behema, because of, the blood, dam, of humankind, Adam, and also, Wah, this grievous injustice against and blatant wrongdoing in opposition to, Shema, the land, Erez, Yes city, Kriya, and all, Wah Sha'uwl, of her inhabitants, Bar Yasab. Chabaquwq 2:17. How does he succeed with a caricature, and what is the benefit of worshipping a false god, Ma Yal Pazel? 694. Indeed, KY, he has fabricated his false god, Posol Hu, devising, preparing, and promoting him, Yazar Hu, by concealing the association with the representation of the pagan god, Maseka, and by becoming a source of lies, making it all untrue, a vain and deceitful sham, Wa Yara Sheka. Thereby, KY, he adds credence to and encourages reliance upon, Betuch, the one who created the construct of himself, Yazar Yetzer al-Hu. For he, himself, performs to make, al-Huasar, worthless gods who do not speak, Ilil Ilam. Chabaquwq 2:18. Woe to the one who says, Howie Amar, while approaching something wooden, La Ha Etz, I want you to act alive and choose to do something, cause unto a dumb, silent, and lifeless rock, La Eben Dumam, wake up, be alert, and rise up, Ur, awake and gloat. Can either guide or teach, Hu Yara. Look, Hine, it, Hu, has been seized and overlaid, taffas, with gold, zahab, and silver, becoming extremely valuable and desirable, Wa Kezif, but completely devoid of, Wa Sha'uwl, the spirit, Ruwach, in its midst, Bar Kireb Hu. Chabaquwq 2:19. This is a request to be set apart, distinct and uncommon, separated, tafala, from erring and going astray, and thus from the ensuing insanity, al-Shigaon, by, La, Chabaquwq, embrace this, Chabaquwq, the prophet, Ha-Nabi. Chabaquwq 3:1. Yahowah, Yahowah, I have listened to the entirety of, Shama, your announced message, Shema Otter. I respect and am inspired by, your work, Poal Otter, Yahowah, Yahowah, throughout the years, Bar Kireb Shanaim, choosing to renew and restore life, Shea Hu, in the midst of those years, Bar Kireb Shanaim. 695 Love, mercy, and compassion, Racham, you make known, Yada, so that it is remembered, Zakar, in turmoil, Bar Rogez. Chabaquwq 3:2. God, Eloah, came, Bo, from, Min, Tiaman, the right, Tiaman, and, Wah, the set-apart one, Qodesh, from, Min, Mount, Ha, Paran, to illuminate, Paran. Pause a moment to weigh the uplifting implications, Selah. He adorns, Kasa, the spiritual realm, Shamaim, in his splendor and glory, Hout Hu. So, Wah, with his love marvelous deeds, Tehillah Hu, she fills and satisfies, Male, the land, Ha Erez. Chabaquwq 3:3. In addition, Wah, knowledge and enlightenment, Nagar, consistent with, Ka, the light, Ha or, will exist, higher, approaching him, La Hu, as dazzling and vivid rays of illumination, Qumran, from his hand and an influence, Min Yod Hu. Although there, at that time and place, Washem, his power and force, as Hu, were concealed and veiled, Kepyaun. Chabaquwq, embrace this, Habakkuk 3:4. As you contemplate the ramifications of Habakkuk's profound prophecy, one which has fallen on deaf ears, God would be delighted if you would Selah, pause and reflect upon its implications. If Jews living in 1st century Judea, Greece, or Rome had used this prophecy as it had been intended, to expose and condemn Sha'uwl, Paul and his New Testament, their lives would have been profoundly improved. Judaism would not have emerged as a means to counter Sha'ul's misappropriation of Daud's life and purpose. And Yahweh would be celebrating Pesach, Matzah, Bikurim, and Shabuah as intended and fulfilled by their Messiah. Without a Kibba's replacement Messiah, bar 696 Kokba, Yahweh would not have been wiped out and there would have been no diaspora. Imperial Rome would not have evolved into the Roman Catholic Church, thereby eliminating 16 centuries of abuse from the Inquisitions and pogroms to the Holocaust. If only,